Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku became the Time Lord Part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see Part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story 𝗵𝗃𝗲 from Wattpad. So let's start the video. No one's POV. Rain poured from the sky as it consumed the city of 𝗵𝗃𝗲. People in the streets using umbrellas to shield themselves from the rain. Most people hurriedly find shelter from the rain so they won't get wet. After a while, thunder suddenly struck the city, startling bystanders who were minding their own business going about the streets. Even though the storm may cause some hindrance in the city, life goes on as it is. As office workers go to their company-owned buildings and type away at their desktops. Cafe owners serving their customers a wide variety of desserts and drinks. Construction workers fixing problems in the city structures. Drivers transporting goods and people to their destinations. Few police officers roaming around the city, not imposing any authoritative figure, for no one really cares for them anymore. As people who fill their roles are government-sanctioned pro-heroes, men and women wearing costumes and using their superpowers to protect the people. Pro-heroes roam the streets at any time in a single day, mostly in the morning since they need sleep. So daytime 𝗵𝗃𝗲, lots of pros patrol the streets stopping fights, drag trafficking, mugging, gang wars, RP, burglaries, Quirk misusage, and hate speech. They stop most of these things. The everyday life of a pro who protects the people in the streets. Sometimes paparazzi follow them for pictures and gossip, while others are just fans who want autographs and other things. This society as we know it revolves around the strong and powerful quirked person becoming a hero or a villain. But what of the people who aren't born with quirks? Those people are treated as if they burden society in itself, the quirkless population. The group of people treated worse than mutant types, the people who are shunned by the majority for having figurative and physical power. They are victims of anti-quirkless sentiment wreaking havoc over that last 50 years because of rise of population. Many people dislike them because ever since they were young they were given the impression that the quirkless are useless and don't contribute anything to society. Many laws have been passed to ensure discrimination against people who are quirkless or mutant types are lessened, but many have failed because of how people are when someone different appears. Useless is the word associated with quirklessness. What if one person can prove being quirkless doesn't mean being useless? No one's POV. In one of the streets of 𝗵𝗃𝗲, it shows a place called 𝗲𝗷 Municipal School where people send their kids to be taught basic subjects schools usually teach. The school may look plain and regular to the eyes of outsiders, but it holds unsavory secrets. Many of which are biased school teachers, unruly students, abuse toward students, and the worst of all, a high suicide rate which most people ignore because usually the victims are people who are quirkless or mutant types. Inside one of the classrooms in th school housed our protagonist, who's only 10 years old at the time. Sitting in the back beside the window, clearly gazing at the outside world, ignoring his surroundings. The rain's pouring quite a lot today. Is it the excess of condensed air that's causing it? Or is it because of the seasonal shift this year? Izuku was thinking to himself in his own little bubble of thoughts, ignoring the sounds of the outside. Mr. Yagi. Hey, Mr. Yagi. Mr. Yagi. A voice shouted at Izuku, pulling him back. Reality, seeing his teacher talking to him. And also seeing his classmates snickering and talking to themselves. Izuku responded to his teacher's calls. Spacing out again, huh, Mr. Yagi? His teacher asked the young boy, who sank in his seat in fear. Why is this, sir? Izuku said, making the teacher sigh in frustration, and his classmates laugh at him. For spacing out again in the middle of class. Detention and a trip to the principal's office. His teacher said, making Izuku gulp. Deku's in trouble. His classmates said in unison. But is sensei T, that's not fair. Izuku ate frantically, opposing what his teacher said. Life isn't fair, Mr. Yagi. You of all people should know that. His sensei said bluntly. Izuku looked at his table, sighing in defeat. Why yes, sensei, Izuku said. Good. Now back to the topic. His sensei said before going back to what he had written on the board, showing 𝗵𝗃𝗲's equation. This equation is called 𝗵𝗃𝗲's equation. Does anyone know what PEMDAS means? He asked the class as some students raised their hands. The teacher then randomly picked one student that was seated in the middle of class. Yes, Mr. Todoroki, he said. Parenthesis equivalent multiplied division answer subtraction. Sir. The young red and white split-haired boy said. That must be correct. It's gotta be. A random voice whispered in the background. Todoroki-kun, one of the smartest in class, of course he's correct. Another random voice whispered in response to the other whisper. Todoroki, hearing this, had a small look of pride in his face as he heard the class's praise about him. What even is that answer? He just made it up on a whim. Izuku said to himself, perplexed at the boy's answer. Good try, Mr. Todoroki, but your answer is wrong. The teacher said, causing Todoroki to sit down on his chair. Annoyed, he got the answer wrong. What? Todoroki got it wrong. How's that possible? The class whispered to themselves in surprise at how Todoroki got the question wrong. Anyone else? Anyone else want to give it a try? The teacher asked the class again. Another hand rose up from a blonde, spiky-haired boy. You, Mr. Bakugo? The teacher said, enticing the boy to get up from his seat. I got the answer, teach. Besides, you gotta always rely on my answers, teach, not peppermints anyways. Bakugo said, insulting Todoroki, who eyed Bakugo with a hateful gaze. I like the bravado, Mr. Bakugo. But please save it for recess time. Now give me your answer. The teacher said. It's perpetual efficient mathematical deduction and subtrahends. Bakugo said with absolute confidence. The class fell in silence as they comprehended his answer. That's extremely wrong. The teacher thought to himself, reacting at Mr. Bakugo thought to themselves. I retract my last statement, he made this one on a whim. How does he make this up? Izuku thought to himself, trying to decipher as to why Bakugo's answer is so wrong. Mr. Bakugo, your answer is wrong, the teacher said, causing the cows to be shocked at the revelation. Even Katsuki got it wrong. The students in class exclaimed. Teach, that'll show you, Mr. Todoroki said, quietly amused that Bakugo got his answer wrong. Let's just say Mr. Bakugo didn't take it very well. What the hell, teach? I'm obviously correct here. Bakugo said, angered at the thought of being wrong. Well, you see, Mr. Bakugo before he could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by Bakugo growling and saying, How the F did I get the answer wrong? Bakugo said disrespectfully to the teacher. The entire classroom went silent at what Katsuki said. Even the teacher went silent. He's going to get detention, right? Or at least a call from his parents, Izuku thought to himself. The teacher then opened his mouth and said, Haha, very funny joke, Mr. Bakugo. Haha, the teacher said while laughing, obviously dismissing the fact, the disrespect. The class as well also joined in on the teacher's awkward laughing, trying to lighten the mood. This act caused Katsuki to let out a smirk and sat back down to his seat with his arms crossed in a superior position. Izuku looked at the class, dumbstruck at what's happening. He turns his head back and forth, frantically watching at how his entire class and teacher accepted Katsuki's disrespect. How come he does something bad and it doesn't go punished? What bias is this, huh? Izuku thought to himself, annoyed at the special treatment Katsuki always gets. Now, anyone else want to answer the question? The teacher asked the class for the third time. No one raised their hand because some were unsure, because both Todoroki and Katsuki, the smartest people in class, got their answers wrong, while some other students genuinely didn't know the answer. It was a long 4 minutes of absolute silence. The teacher saw this and sighed, saying, Well, since no one knows, I'm gonna dash. Before he could finish what he was going to say, a hand was suddenly raised. He saw the hand originated from the boy on the window seat, Izuku Yagi. The teacher saw his hand, sighing that he may also get the answer wrong. Hug. Fine, have at it, Mr. Yagi. You better be sure your answer is correct. The teacher said, skeptical at Izuku's answer. PEMDAS means parenthesis, exponent, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. Sir. Izuku said frantically. New way. Deku's answer's right. He's Deku, the whispers of the class said. You got that right? Another student whispered. Both 𝗧𝗵𝗲 and 𝗧𝗪𝗪𝗀𝗧𝗔, smirking to themselves because they know that Deku is lower than them, so he possibly couldn't answer the question. The teacher looked at Izuku with wide eyes as he didn't expect him to get the answer correct. 𝗬𝗲𝗪𝗪𝗀𝗧𝗪 correct, Mr. Wayagi. The teacher said, obviously surprised at what his quirkless student said. When Izuku heard this, he sat back down quickly, not wanting to gain attention. What? The class said in unison, shook at the thought Deku getting the answer right. Let's learn how to solve them. The teacher said, walking to his whiteboard and started writing down examples of separate PEMDAS equations, explaining them as they go. Deku, just wait until I get my hands on you. 𝗧𝗪𝗪𝗀𝗧𝗪 thought to himself, fuming in rage. While Shoto was in silence berating himself for his lack of knowledge and him being outdone by Izuku. Meanwhile, instead of listening to him, the class sat there in shock, hearing that their teacher just said that his answer was correct. Some people think that in these situations they would cheer and praise the young boy. It was the opposite. Instead of that, Izuku received skeptical looks from his classmates, some even voicing out their opinion on the matter. Izuku noticed the stares he got and ignored them the best he could. Mostly the ones he got from Shoto Todoroki and Katsuki Bakugo, who was growling at him. How did he get it right? A student gossiped with two other classmates. I dunno, maybe he's actually good in maths. A student said in response. Maybe. A student said, making Izuku's ears perk up because of the sudden praise. Before Izuku could savor the thought of praise, the same student said in continuation. Or maybe he cheated? A student suggested, causing the group of students to ask why. Maybe he read through the book and prepared beforehand. The same student said in outrage, causing the others to collectively agree with the student. Well, we better teach him a lesson. A random student said, causing the group to collectively agree again. Both Bakugo and Todoroki smirk at what the hive mind of the class were concluding on. Izuku heard all of this, causing his mood to worsen, having an aura of dread surround him. Before the students could continue on about in their conversation, they were interrupted by an outside source. Are you guys even paying attention? The teacher asked his students, angered at how they are talking amidst themselves and not paying attention to the topic written on the board. Thank Kami-sama for making sensei intervene, Izuku thought to himself with his hands in a praying position, a single tear running down his face in relief. Why yes, sensei. The group of students said, obviously not wanting to get in trouble. Then where's your damn notebooks? Their teacher said. Even though it's for the worst of reasons, Izuku thought to himself, sweat dropping at his teacher's frustration. This caused the group to notice the students who weren't part of the group were seen holding their notebooks, writing down notes. So they quickly get their notebooks and start writing away. Time skip brought to you by Izuku being best boy. No one's POV. It was lunchtime in Aldra Municipal School cafeteria. It was filled with all the types of students in the class hierarchy. They all sat at different rows of tables, eating their lunches, chatting with their friends to pass the time. While some students who weren't eating were either outside in the school field playing sports such as volleyball, soccer, badminton, and etc. Others were just hanging out, sitting down on where they can sit and chill with their friends. Even though the students were being supervised by some teachers. At times teachers would turn a blind eye to some students that they're in good terms with, allow them to do what they please. Such as bullying kids, intimidating kids and extorting them, and even beating some kids half to death. And the teachers supervising don't give a rat's but as long as they were bribed. So some students were looking for Izuku's whereabouts to beat him up and take revenge for getting them in trouble in class a while ago. They were searching where he could be by examining the entire school field, looking through every possible hiding place Izuku could weasel his way in. They never thought of looking above, because Izuku was eating his lunch on the school rooftop. He was sitting down on a table that was left there by the school janitors who were too tired to place it back. He was just sitting down on the table with his food on the desk, containing a cheap medium-sized of cup noodles ramen that was already cooked. He grabbed the bowl and was about to slurp some noodles with his chopsticks until he heard noises. Wait, what's that noise? Izuku said slowly and quietly, weary of who might have found the rooftop. His attention turned to a small group of bids resting on the rooftop, some pecking on the floor. Izuku notices them and, wanting to study one of them, he slowly approaches the group step by step. Until he reached his fourth step, the group was alarmed and flew away quickly. Ah, fizzle sticks. I messed up. Now I can't study the bird's appearance. Great job me. Izuku said, annoyed at not studying one of the birds. He turned his back and started to walk back to his table. He heard some chirping noises behind him. He turned around and as if luck were on his side, he saw one bird still relaxing on the rooftop, not following his flock. He then approached the bird slower with non-existent footsteps noise. He slowly moved inch by inch, not even alarming the bird. He got closer and closer and closer until he was in literal contact range. Surprisingly, the bird didn't react at all, or even noticing Izuku's presence. He then brought his arms out into a snatching position and slowly tilted his body to get closer to the bird. His hands were in breathing distance of the bird. Each move he made would be crucial in snatching the bird. In one full swoop he grabbed the bird, securing his hold on. The now panicked bird. It started to squirm around in his touch, trying to break free from the Izuku's clutches, thinking Izuku would kill it. He noticed the bird's distress, softening his hold a bit. He then pet the top of the bird's head, going to its supposed ear, and said, Hey, relax, Mr. Birdie, please. I'm not going to hurt you. You know that, right? Izuku said innocently to the bird, showing his pure intentions. Izuku then lifted the bird in front of him so he can look at it in the eye. As he looked into its eyes, he can see the fear and dread behind it, wishing not to die. Izuku understood its feelings, wishing not to die as well. Now, Mr. Birdie, since you're calm, no. Can I draw you? Izuku said softly to the bird, trying not to distress it. The bird didn't tweet yes or no or even nod at the boy's question. He just gave Izuku a look in his eyes that confirms it all. Yay. Izuku said, raising his arms up like a child with the bird resting on top of his palm. Now let's go start drawing, Mr. Birdie. Izuku said, hurriedly approaching his table. He gently places down the bird on the table and then turns his 𝗔𝗫𝗁 to his knackpack, rummaging through it to find one of his other notebooks. As he was doing that, the bird was exploring the stuff on the table. It saw the chopsticks laying there and started fiddling with it, like pecking or slightly kicking it. It then moved on to a cup it found strange because it had steam coming out of it, and it let out this taste aroma that was intoxicating for the bird. It looked inside 2C colored water with noodles inside, so it sticked its beak in and drank some of the liquid. It then brought its head back up from the cup and burped in satisfaction. It started to have eye the cup with hunger before dipping its head again for a second fill. While it was sipping the soup, Izuku's appeared back with a notebook in hand with a pencil and eraser. Hey, I'm back, Mr. Birdie. Wait, what are you doing? Izuku said, shocked at seeing the bird eat some of his lunch. The bird then frantically lifted his head from the cup to reveal a wet beak with a single noodle on top of it, like a mustache of sorts. It moved away from the cup in fear of what Izuku would do to it. It expected Izuku to be angry, but instead he got was shocking to it. Wow. That's so cool. A bird that likes to eat cup noodles. Fascinating. I need to write this down in my notes. Izuku said before opening his notebook quickly and flipping through some used pages before finding a blank one, then writing on it. The bird looked at Izuku with confusion because of the way he isn't angry but more of so curious as to the situation. Izuku then looked up from his notebook and said to the still confused bird, Can you please move a bit to the right, Mr. Birdie? Izuku asked the bird, who complied quickly. Thank you, Mr. Birdie. Izuku said before going back to drawing the small bird. The two sat in silence as Izuku was still drawing the bird. After a few minutes, the noise of his pencil touching the paper stopped as he looked up and gave the bird a pure smile before saying, I'm done now, Mr. Birdie. You want to see it? Izuku said, excited at showing the bird the final product. The bird could only look at the boy with confusion, so Izuku took it as a yes and said, I'll take your silence as a yes then. Izuku said before showing the bird the drawing. The bird's reaction was amazement at the sight. It was as if it was looking at a mirror or a reflection of itself. The drawing was a perfect sketch of the bird with every detail added on for more accuracy, from the slight ruffleness of feathers to the gap between its eyes. Do you like it, Mr. Birdie? Izuku asked the bird innocently. It was yet replied with silence as the bird was gawking at how it looked so lifelike, as if it were another being entirely. Izuku chuckled at the sight of the starry-eyed bird and said, I'll take your silence as a yes then. I knew you'd love it. Izuku said happily as he made someone's day better, even though it's just a bird. Now, Mr. Birdie. Since you cooperated very well. Izuku said, citing out the last part for anticipation. The bird looked at Izuku with anticipation. I'm going to give you some of my noodles. Izuku said, making the bird go starry-eyed once again. Izuku then magically pulled out a small round container. He then poured some of his noodles into the container and handing it to the bird, who happily ate the noodles and soup. Izuku then started to slowly eat his meal, savoring it as it was his first meal of the day. As they were eating, Izuku spoke up saying, "Hey Mr. Birdie, can I ask you a question?" Izuku asked the bird nonchalantly. The bird responded by lifting his head and tweeting at him, confirming it as a yes. "I was wondering what's it like to fly up in the sky?" Izuku said, making the bird look at him with confusion. "Like, what does it feel like? To, glide in the air. To not worry about the problems that plagues you on land," Izuku said, looking down on the school field, looking at the students who were looking for him. "Not to worry about being benched for being different. Or being bullied for not being like others," Izuku said, making the conversation go sadder each word. "To have a people who care for you at all, people who accept you for being you. Have you felt that?" Izuku said, causing the bird to stop eating and look at the boy with concern. "Have you ever felt being free? Like free of the problems society brings upon us?" Izuku said, now looking beyond the school to where people were crossing the streets, passing by cars and such, society itself. And I'm not saying that society is at fault here. But sometimes people are just in their own personal bubble, that they ignore the feelings of others, or am I saying is society at fault? I can't tell any mom, just tired. Have you ever felt mentally exhausted? Izuku said, looking at the table with dim, tired eyes. The bird now was concerned for the boy because at first it was about how it flies, but now it divulged into questions about the machinations of society itself. Izuku looked at his side to see the worried bird, and his attitude changed back to normal. He gave the bird a dismissive smile before saying, "Sorry, Mr. Bird. That was a strange thing to ask. Wasn't it?" Izuku said, giving the bird a fake smile, acting as if he didn't say what he said. The bird was still worried for the boy as silence befell the two before they both went back to eating. A few minutes passed by before they were both finished with their meal. The bird burped in satisfaction at his tasty meal as Izuku chuckled at the sight. He grabbed a paper bag from under the table and placed the noodles and chopsticks inside, going to bring it with him before finding a suitable trash can. As he did that, the school lunch bell rang loudly, alerting the students to go back to class. As they all run back into the main school building, Izuku sighed in disappointment because he wanted to spend more time with his new bird friends. But sadly they had to part ways for the time being. "Sorry, Mr. Birdie, I have to go back to class," he told the bird, who understood what he said, saddened at the thought of parting ways. Izuku noticed this and tried cheer up the sad bird, saying, "Hey, don't be sad. Just because we have to say our goodbyes doesn't mean we won't see each other again," Izuku said to the bird as it looked at him with tears evident in its eyes. Izuku tried to cheer up the bird once more. "Hey, don't cry, Mr. Birdie. You know what? Won't see you for a time doesn't mean I won't see you in the future. Who knows?" Izuku said, giving the bird a wholesome smile, uplifting its spirits. He then followed up saying, "Maybe I'll bring 2 cups of noodles. What'd say, buddy?" Izuku said to the bird as it had stars in its eyes again, thinking about the noodles it ate. The bird looked on with excitement in the near future. "I knew you'd love that," Izuku said while chuckling. "In the meantime though, buddy," Izuku said, getting closer to the bird. "It's time for me to go now," Izuku said, with the bird nodding in understanding. He then picked up all of his stuff and placed it in his bag, slowly walking to the exit. He turns back to the bird one last time, giving the bird a bitter-sweet smile while waving goodbye as he exits the rooftop. As the bird secretly waved its wing in goodbye before flying away, as it was saddened at seeing a friend go so fast. Time skipped to the end of the school day, brought to you by Child Izuku. Izuku's POV: I ran out of my classroom avoiding her and her friends so I won't get another beating. As I was trying to leave the school grounds, I was bumping into some other of my school mates on accident. In response they call say, "Watch it, loser." Or what's with the rush, death. I wasn't able to defend myself because I really needed to leave the school grounds. As I was running to the staircase, some teachers reprimanded me for running even though they always turn a blind eye to the others. I almost slip on one of the steps due to me almost slipping on a piece of chewed gum. I sigh in relief as I avoided falling down the stairs. I then quickly walk down the steps carefully so I won't visit the nurse's office again. I was getting tired from all the running, so I briefly stopped to catch some air for a few minutes. I then slowly walked down the steps to replenish some used-up energy. While I was walking down the steps, I saw 2 other students who look older than me walking down as well. I pay them no mind since they aren't bothering as I wasn't bothering them. They seemingly slow down with their pace, so I walk forward ahead of them to hurry me climbing down the stairs. As I was walking in front of them, I heard the 2 of them giggle and whisper something really softly. Surprisingly, I could hear them. "Hey, did you hear that the green-haired kid's quirkless?" one of the girls said while giggling. "Yeah, I heard. What a loser. I mean, how unlucky do you gotta be to turn out to be quirkless?" The other girl said, making me try not to feel bad at their remarks. "Did you hear he's also the sibling of 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃?" The first girl said, making me mentally sigh at how annoying and popular my sister is. Of course I heard of her. Who doesn't know the Queen of Speed? Her quirk allows her to increase her speed 3x times. How cool is that? She said, making me mentally sigh once again because of the praise she gets for quirk. Why am I surprised that even older students are a fan of her quirk? I said to myself, annoyed once more than before. "Hey, guess what?" the girl said to the other girl. "What?" the other girl replied to her. "I'm gonna kick the green-haired kid in the back. Wanna join me? It's gonna be hilarious, I tell ya." The first girl said, Maybe I can." "No, Izuku, you can't do that. It's not nice to do that to her. Maybe I can just play it off as an accident. I mean, we're close to the end of the staircase, so I'll maybe play it as an accident." I thought to myself, smirking at the thought of a little play. I suddenly stopped thinking to myself as I listened to the other girl reply to the first girl's question. "Maybe you can do it instead. 'Cause it would be funny if you just did it," the other girl replied, making me smirk, knowing my plan has a chance to work. "More fun for me, I guess. Here we go," she said as I hear her reeling back her leg about to hit me, so I carefully plan around her plan. As if time slows down for me, I listen carefully her movements, slowly predicting when her leg's going to hit me. In about 2.5 seconds her leg is going to hit me. Wait a minute, when did I know to predict people movements? Before I could answer my question, her leg was about to hit me, so I act on my plan. I slowly sidestepped on the other side of the step while still walking down, causing her to say, "Why, what the hell dash?" Before she could finish what she was going to say, she lost her balance and fell forward, tumbling down the steps that I could see in my peripheral vision. I playfully smirk as I walked a few more steps down, then stopping to see her friend rushing down the staircase in lightning speed, saying, "Wait, no." The other girl called to her friend who was still rolling down the steps. Her name's Aya. Too bad I had to make her face the consequences of her actions. She had a nice name though. I said to myself, seeing I was closer to the exit of the staircase. I walked down a few more steps before setting my feet on solid ground, seeing the exit on the horizon. While I was going to leave already before I saw the fruits of my LB, I saw she was lying down on the floor, obviously dizzy and hurt with noticeable scruffs and bruises, while her friend sort of consoles her. Why do I feel bad? She had it coming, right? I didn't mean for her to be seriously injured. I asked myself, looking at the scene unfold with guilt filling my stomach. "Ike, are you okay? Are you hurt or anything?" The other girl asked the now-named girl Ike, who was lying down, pain all over her. How do you do? Why would you think I feel, huh? Ike said to the other girl as I feel bad. I too don't know, okay. I'm worried for you, of course, dummy. The other girl said while shedding some tears for her friend. It's okay, baby, I feel like absolute. The girl said, making me internally spit on my drink as it was revealed the two were dating. Why, you'll be fine. I promise. The other girl said to her girlfriend, making me want to leave the two in peace. I was about to walk away and leave before something in my gut told me to help the two. So I quickly rushed to the two girls instead of leaving the school. I go to the girl who seemingly passed out from what I deduce is pain and sudden fatigue. The other girl looks at me and says, "What the hell are you doing?" she said to me, obviously angered at me. Helping, I said to the other girl before placing my hand on her neck checking for a pulse. I examined her torso to notice her breathing was abnormal as she looked like she was going through some pain. So I lifted the top part of her uniform to check if my prediction is right until I heard some outcry from the other girl. Hey, what the hell are you doing, 𝗵𝗃𝗏? The other girl asked me and I told her without looking at her. I'm checking if she ruptured her ribs and it seems she has broken 2 ribs, one on her right while the other on her left, it seems, Izuku said, pointing at the abrasions on her right and left side on the torso as I quickly lower her uniform top. How the hell do you know that? She said to me, eyeing me with suspicion. There's no time for explanation. We need to carry her to the clinic now. I say as I try to lift her up, sadly only lifting her a bit before her body slumps down on the floor again, causing her to let out a wince of pain while still passed out. I need you to help me bring her there. Can you do that? I say to her, dead in the eye, as she goes shaky a bit. And not sure. The girl says nervously while rubbing her shoulder. If she's going to come out of this alive, then you've got to help me. Time is of the essence. I said, trying to lift her up once more. The girl said nervously once again, making me think of another way of convincing. Don't you love her? I asked the girl, who immediately replied. Why, yes, of course. Then help me save her. I said frantically as she quickly went behind the girl and lifted her by her legs. As me and the girl run to the clinic in a hurry, passing by others who looked at us with weird looks and some others who really didn't care about what me and the girl were doing. As I was running, I saw that I passed by some teachers looking at us weirdly, hoping not to deal with them later on. As we enter more hallways that show more students in them possibly hanging out. As we were running, I could see that we were getting closer to the clinic until this male figure arrived. Startling me, I heard him say, Mr. Yagi, where are you going in such a hurry, huh? A random teacher I knew said to me as he was blocking the hallway. I had to think quickly and chose the fastest option I could choose. I was getting closer to the teacher until I fully turned a complete left on him, going through the sides with the girl behind me also quickly turning as well. As we finally enter the clinic with her a lot, while I was just fine surprisingly, as the nurse asked what her business was. The girl then told her that her girlfriend broke her ribs and need help, as 2 other nurses arrive at the scene and take the girl to the infirmary, while the other one still worried for her but sighed in relief, wiping some sweat of her forehead. I smile at the sight of helping someone. I quietly leave the clinic as my job was done. As I left, I could hear the other girl's confusion as I seemingly disappeared from the room. I quickly run to the original exit that I needed to go to. Time skip to Izuku arriving to the school building entrance/exit gate. I wipe some sweat of my brow as I sort of chuckle at the circumstances of a while ago as I step onto the exit of the school. I felt relieved as I arrived at my destination without encountering them. I breathe in the air, smelling some food. Must be vendors on the other street that sell tasty food that to die for. As I walk a bit, trying to arrive to the walls that the school has with the open gate, as I think to myself for a while. I'm happy that I was able to help that girl's girlfriend. Even though it was my fault that she fell down the staircase, but hey, I still helped them in a way, I thought to myself, seeing as I was slowly nearing the exit of the school, smelling the freedom that was to come my way. As I was so near to the gate, I heard someone shout to me that made my bones shiver in fear. Oi! A voice said to me behind me as I gulp and turn around quickly to see 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗁 looking at me with an evil smirk, activating his quirk. Setting of menacing explosions from his palms. Where do you think you're going? Another voice said as it revealed to be Shoto Todoroki, looking at me coldly as his face shown zero emotions. Oh, Kami-sama, why? I thought to myself before they suddenly approach me, each step making me shake each time. No one's POV. Izuku looked on with fear. He didn't know what to do or where to go in this situation. As he was being stared down by 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗁 and Shoto Todoroki, one of his top bullies. He trembled at the sight as his legs stiffened. Katsuki noticed this and started cackling like a maniac, laughing at Deku's fear and weakness. As for Shoto, he was still staring Izuku down with his cold and emotionless gaze. Katsuki then said while still cackling at Deku's obvious fear. "Yet still yourself over there, Deku. What the hell am I even saying? You obviously are." "Ha!" Katsuki said, barely holding in his laughter at Izuku's fear. His response to Izuku plastered a small smug smirk on Shoto's face, seemingly agreeing with what Katsuki said. Before his face forms back to its cold and emotionless state. Katsuki then stopped cackling a bit at Izuku and said without a care. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 now Deku bring your sorry but here cause I need to bring ya to Koko for training, Katsuki said, flashing an evil grin anticipating for later. Izuku stopped shaking and composed himself, still wary to the situation at hand. OKW what do I do 𝗧𝗵𝗃. Should I follow what 𝗧𝗵𝗃 says to not get beat you up? Should I risk it and are you dash? Before Izuku could finish his thought he was suddenly interrupted by Katsuki. As he grew impatient waiting for Deku and snapped shouting at him saying, Deku get useless sorry but here so we can take you to Koko. You are so damn slow. You can't even follow orders like the useless dog you arts. Katsuki said, annoyed at Izuku's slowness. This struck a nerve in Izuku. He could tolerate some of the names and derogatory terms he's fed with for the past few years, but this one is special as it made him shift from who he regularly is as his kind and forgiving thoughts changed. Just 80 dog to him. Am I a dog to everyone who sees me? A human being like the others compared to a 𝗬𝗵𝗲 and weak-minded animal who follows what says do this he says think this he says eat this he says, Izuku thought to himself as his composure slowly turned to one of a trembling, scared child to something different. Shoto saw the change in Izuku's posture. The once small and weak Deku in his eyes felt different, as if he was a danger. Deku looks weird. What am I saying? He's always weird, but weirder than usual. He looks weird. Why isn't he trembling and why does his hair look darker? Shoto thought to himself watching Izuku. Deku can't you hear me? I know you're not deaf retd. Katsuki said while setting off mini explosions trying to act menacing. Katsuki kept on glaring at Deku as if he were Izuku's owner and he disobeyed his no snap out of it Izuku. Why you are not a dog? There must be a reasonable explanation. Well, of course there always should right. Izuku thought to himself as he snapped out of his trance. While he was talking to himself he didn't notice his surroundings wear off. The wind seemed heavy and slow, unusual for a windy day. The trees' leaves also were moving slower like the wind, as if it was getting heavier. Izuku finally took notice as when he lifted his head up, he saw Katsuki frozen mid-speech while Shoto aswell. What's happening? Is 𝗧𝗵𝗃 and Shoto-kun frozen? He said out loud, frantically looking for an answer. And maybe this is just a J joke. Yeah, funny ruse. Heavy very funny guys. But the joke is taking too long. He said, looking at the two, waiting for an answer or a simple movement to solidify his claims. Silence was their reply as they still stood still like stone statues. He kept on looking on to the boys, waiting for an answer for 5 more seconds, starting to sweat and get nervous a bit. You guys? And maybe I should laugh him more. He said while he grew more and more increasingly worried. He suddenly dropped down to his knees, gripping the sides of his head, trying to make sense of this situation he is currently in. Grugs. This doesn't make any sense. Did time just seemingly stop? Did something bad happen? Like is this a villain attack? Or an effect of a villain's? Quirk. He thought to himself, trying to find the cause of the problem. After a few minutes Izuku came up to an unprecedented conclusion that was more of so an assumption if you think about it. And maybe this could be my Quirk. It could be activating as of this moments. This really could be it. And my own Quirk. Finally won't be bullied anymore. He thought to himself as he reeled his head back as tears swelled up in his eyes, threatening to come out at the realization. He then made a fist, grasping his uniform tightly as some tears started streaming down his eyes, knowing he is not useless in people's eyes. I can finally be a her dash. Before he could finish what he was going to say, something interrupted him. Fufufufu o kawaii koto, a disembodied voice said. The voice sounded one of a cocky and smug person of class. It was smooth and deep, laced with a posh sing-song British accent, making it sound sinister and authoritative to people who hear him talking. What's with the voice? Am I going crazy? Maybe I am, he thought to himself, talking about his poor mental health. Maybe I am a voice in your head, just a figment of your poor mental state, the voice replied. Would you looked at that? The voice is, oh, I truly am crazy, he said while gripping the back of his head. Or maybe I am real and you're just doubting yourself, you pathetic Deku, the voice said as it sent shivers down Izuku's spine, as it was as if the voice was talking directly to his ear. Izuku frantically turned his head, looking around where the voice came from. Phew, how cute, just like a scared lamb looking for a wolf, the voice said as it sounded closer to him. I think he got closer. He's alright across me. He panicked to himself as his head snapped to his right. He anticipated to see something speaking to him. Nothing was there, nothing, not even a single silhouette of a person. He kept turning his head over and over, trying to find where the voice came from, until a scared little lamb, weak and nervous, wanting to not dare meet a hungry wolf, wanting to sink its teeth on a juicy meal to savor its greedy needs, the voice said once again as its voice disappeared in a whisper. Where are you, huh? Show yourself, why you creep. Izuku said, scared of the voice and its intentions. Oh, how cute! In the eyes of a useless waste bin, I am a creep, but in the eyes of a gentleman such as myself, I am a magnificent man of valor. The voice said, showing itself to Izuku as it was very dark and menacing. It was a dark silhouette without any noticeable features aside from it had what seemed to be an outline of pitch-black dark hair and two giant holes protruding white rays of light. Its body had one of a regular middle schooler, but much taller than average and slimmer as some parts of its body. A dark purple aura surrounded the spirit as some of it was wisping away into the air. What are you? Izuku said, screaming at the ungodly sight of the appearance of the voice. Oh, are you scared, little one? At my appearance of all things, how shameful! The voice said, feigning being hurt by Izuku's words. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, 𝗵𝗃𝗲 voice. I apologize for hurting your feelings. Izuku replied quickly, trying to be polite to the spirit. The spirit visibly recoiled in disgust at Izuku's politeness and apologetic nature, even if his face can't be seen. How irksome to deal with such a goody two-shoes. No wonder why your schoolmates bully and beat you up. I would too, just to hear those precious screams of yours. Phew, the voice said, mocking Izuku and his goodwill nature. Izuku hung his head in shame and sadness, as even a thing such as that mocks him for his behavior. He was about to snap back at the voice before remembering that he should act and be better than people who bully him. Oh, what is wrong, child? A cat got your tongue, mocked the voice once more. Izuku tried to snap back at the spirit but instead kept quiet. Phew, nothing good to come up with. Such a shame. It truly is pathetic seeing a child such as yourself grovel at people's feet just because they have a quirk, not even trying to make yourself better by outsmarting or using other methods to gain the upper hand or use it against them, but it is expected from people such as yourself, the people who fate decided they would be different from others who have quirks, the quirkless people or the lesser people that only bring shame to those who are better. It is of course justified to bully, harass, and murder these common vermin. For the strong to survive and the weak perish, isn't that the meaning of life and its constructs? I wonder how a quirkless child's screams sound like. Is it the same as others or more tearful and agonizing? If so, then it would be euphoric to listen to, the voice said darkly, showing his sadistic and lunatic side. Something snapped inside of Izuku, some feeling he hasn't ever felt before. The urge to protect something or someone, the urge to defend people doing it without the intent of reward or biases. I understand now. Izuku stuttered out. His eyes looked fierce and determined. Care to elaborate? The voice said smugly. I understand now. You act superior, Izuku said in a bit hushed tone. Oh, please do tell, it said once more, not caring about what Izuku's going to say. Why you act so superior? Because you're weak, Izuku said, catching the spirit's attention. Just by the way you speak and talk, I can know you're egotistical and a bully who has never been shown his place. I can see the truth behind those eyes of yours. One's filled with malicious intent, only wanting to see people suffer. You know why? Because it pleases to or sick dreams of yours. Izuku said as his stutter was lost midway through. He started walking each step, getting closer to the spirit. The spirit took slow steps backward instinctively out of a small feeling it hadn't felt in quite some time. Izuku continued on with what he was saying with an obvious furrowed eyebrows and frown mixed with a neutral face. It portrayed his angered expression towards the spirit and what it said and its views. You think of yourself as a god among filthy vermin who are beneath you in every way possible, but the truth is this: you're not a god. You're just a parasite eaten out with hatred and 𝗧𝗵𝗲, longing for the pain and fear of others. You feed on them. On the feeling of torment and hatred and prejudice and sorrow, always to satisfy your sadistic urges, just to please your greed. Izuku said, staring down the spirit in the eyes, not faltering whatsoever. His eyes burning with a fiery resolve that couldn't be stopped. The spirit was at what Izuku said and grabbed the boy's uniform collar and pulled him of the ground, staring him dead in the eye. How dare you insult me, vermin? I am your superior. I demand 𝗧𝗵𝗃. Before the spirit could finish with what he will say, he suddenly stopped ranting. Instead, looking directly into Izuku's eyes, seeing as it was satisfied. He looked at the boy and understood the clear victory was Izuku's, as his plan had worked into making him lose his composure and snap. The voice saw clearly Izuku's intentions and thought of a backup plan to not give him the satisfaction Izuku gets. The spirit then chuckles at the boy before it turns to a full-on storm of bone-chilling laughter as it starts clapping its hands in amusement. Prevailing wind comes from nowhere and breezes past its hair, causing it to flow delicately in the air. You think your rant will change anything. You are just a pathetic, naive child who doesn't understand the real world. Before it could finish, Izuku suddenly interrupted. Naive? I'd rather be naive to this world than become a monster like you. Izuku said coldly, staring at the spirit's soul. The voice suddenly bursts into laughter at the boy once again. It then composes itself a bit while still chuckling at the boy's remark. I'm honestly surprised to see the weak and cowering boy minutes ago turn into a strong and brave man. Why is that? The voice asked the boy, taunting him. When people like you talk about killing and torturing innocent people because of their differences, one must defend and assist them. Even if it's not my business, I have to help, even if it may hurt me. You know why? Because that is what heroes do. Izuku said. Such a mighty hero complex you have. Why must you have a hero complex? Is it because of your goal as a hero? Or is it personal? The voice said, trying to crack the boy and make him weak. Izuku went silent. Oh, did I strike a nerve of yours? If so, then I hope it hurt. Izuku tried to say something before he just went silent. Ah, so you have an undesirable reason to help people. If so, then you would make such a stereotypical hero with the same bland dream. How boring. The voice said, taunting Izuku. Maybe you lie to me because you are ashamed of your real reason. Maybe the real reason for wanting to become a hero is as common as wanting to be a 𝗬𝗲. For the wealth, the wanting of many to become as rich as 𝗵𝘃𝗵𝗲 or even richer than him. After all, the sky's the limit. Today's societal greed must have influenced your little brain, hasn't it? The voice said, once again mocking Izuku as it circled around him while saying that. As it says that it creates illusions of little voices whispering into Izuku's ears. Such greed, how greedy must you be? To choose money over people's lives? How pathetic. Izuku fell to his knees as the voices kept on saying this to him in repeat, as all he heard was quiet little whispers. Such greed. How greedy must you be? To choose money over people's lives? How pathetic. The voices got louder as it started to increase in number, causing him to grip his head in pain as an annoying stinging sound joined in as he felt that his mind was being tortured. The voice had an evil grin plastered all over its face as he enjoyed listening Izuku's pained groans and watching him shake on the ground as he clutches his head in pain. The sight was euphoric for him, but not as close as watching millions of people slowly burning to death, their screams of agonizing pain as their skin would slowly melt and burn. Screaming for help as he wishes to watch them and bask in the scent of pain and hopelessness as his urges would momentarily be fulfilled. You truly are pathetic, just as a dog who whimpers when scolded, the voice said, looking down on the in-pain boy. Izuku heard this as the voices whispering to him was being filtered out by something else. Don't listen to him, Izuku. Don't let him influence what you think, Izuku said to himself reassuringly. The voices got louder as it broke the barrier and started to say it once more. I can't. The voices there too much. They can't stop. They won't stop, Izuku whimpered back to himself. I'm sorry for being weak. If only I could do so much more, Izuku thought to himself as tears started swelling up in his eyes. Remember, Izuku, remember who you are defending, the other Izuku said as visions of powerless and helpless people flashed through his mind. Remember why you are defending them, the other Izuku said as visions of helpless people were being beaten down on the streets as bystanders just idly walk past the scene, no one daring to help. Izuku gritted his teeth at the vision. Why must you defend them? The other Izuku said as the whispers were gradually becoming weaker. Because no one will defend them, Izuku said as his grip over his head softened. Why do you defend them? Asked the other Izuku. So that no one must endure what I have endured. Izuku thought to himself as he stopped holding his head as the whispers went away. He suddenly got up from the ground, surprising the spirit. Izuku made a fist as he regained the reason of why he is confronting the spirit. As he made a fist and held it tightly, causing some veins to pop out. He then looked at the spirit directly in the eyes as the fire in his eyes rekindled much more brighter as the spirit took notice and its eyes visibly widened in surprise. I defend people because I will never allow another person to endure the pain and torment I have felt. I try to defend innocent people from ever meeting you. Izuku said as he pointed at the spirit. You are the vile, disgusting, and evil. You are the devil incarnate. Izuku said as the spirit hung its head in silence. Izuku kept on staring down the spirit as he dare not to stop in knowing that what he had said is true and he stands by it. The spirit suddenly grabs Izuku by the neck with both hands gripping at Izuku's neck tightly while lifting him off the ground a few feet. The spirit then lifted its head to reveal its hateful gaze at the boy as its eyes were blood red instead of it plain white color. The spirit had snapped at the boy and intends to harm Izuku. How dare you patronize me with such derogatory names? I will not be called such by a useless member of society. The utter gall of calling me those names. No inferior being shall ever disrespect me at all. You utter piece of horse, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 special needs child. I will teach you what it means to disrespect me. The voice said as it had lost its cool and sing-song composure and went on a curse-filled rage. I see now my plan did work. Good too, now I executed it properly. Izuku thought to himself, a bit proud that his plan worked well. Izuku didn't stop staring at the spirit's eyes even if there wasn't much air in his lungs. He was still determined to stand his ground. I will show you the consequences of your actions, 𝗧𝗵𝗲. The voice said as its menacing aura flared up violently. The voice's shadow body started to wisp away as it started to become spirit-like. Izuku noticed this and watched with confusion until one of the wisps started to dangerously get close to his mouth. The wisp then entered Izuku's mouth as other wisps also entered by groups as he gagged as it was going down his throat. Some of it was entering his nose as another entrance. Izuku started struggling in the voice's grip, trying to break free as the voice watched on with an evil grin as its form started to shrivel down and shrink. I can't be breath. Is this how I'm gonna die? I don't want to die, just not yet, Izuku thought to himself as his eyes slowly closed. Izuku then passed out from the lack of oxygen as the voice slowly shrunk until its entire body entered Izuku as the boy fell to the floor with a loud thud. After a few long seconds, the boy's body started moving once again with his fingers tested if it works. Then his feet were turning side to side, then his left arm was lifted up. So was his torso as the boy's eyes were still closed. He suddenly opened his eyes, revealing ruby red irises than his regular emerald green ones. His neutral expression mouth formed cheek-to-cheek smile as it made him look creepy. He then checked his left arm and examined it before fidgeting with his fingers. 𝗵𝗃, how interesting, I am able of possession of other bodies, sadly I had to use one that's faulty, Izuku said, as his voice sounded smoother with a sing-song tone in there. Anyways, must get started, Izuku said, as he stand up perfectly with one jump landing on his 2 feet. I shall show you, never mess with your superior, Izuku said coldly. referring to himself as he got into a position with his arms crossed and standing straight, hanging his head as he looked onto the ground, adding to dramatic effect. Time suddenly resumed as the birds in the sky slowly moved forwards and the leaves being affected by the wind as time continues to flow normally. It has begun, fu. Izuku thought to himself, as everything went back to normal in time and space. Oide, can't you hear me, you piece of 𝗧𝗵𝗲? Katsuki barked at Izuku, not noticing that Deku's disposition was off. Silence was Izuku's reply. Oi, you fuckwit, can't you hear me? Katsuki said once again, not finding Deku off. A longer silence was still Izuku's reply. That's it, I'm gonna pummel you to the ground. Katsuki said as he was about to walk forward and attack Deku before he was held back by his shoulder. What the F do you want, Izuku? Katsuki asked Shoto. Shoto stuttered out as he pointed at Izuku. What the F are you on about? It's just Deku, what the hell's? Katsuki said as he finally took notice and saw Izuku. Izuku was surrounded by a menacing purple aura that was violently shaking. His hair became darker as the once light green slowly shaded into a darker green. Katsuki and Shoto were scared and confused at the sight, and unease filling their guts as they watched Izuku slowly lift his head. Izuku directly looked at the two boys with an evil smile as he placed a hand at his face, still smiling evilly at the two. He revealed his now ruby red eyes, adding onto the menacing aura he is portraying. Katsuki and Shoto visibly took a step back at the sight of Izuku. What the heck? Shoto said, raising his voice for the first time on Izuku. What in the absolute F? Katsuki said the same thing as Shoto, but much more rash and inappropriate. Fufu, are you scared? If so, then be very afraid, Izuku said as he raised his eyebrow at the two while still wearing the evil smirk he has. Silence was their reply to Izuku as they were shocked to hear even his voice had changed. Katsuki then shook his head and mustered up all the bravado he could get and barked back at Izuku. I ain't a scared of you effer, Katsuki said, trying his best to intimidate Izuku. Oh, how cute, you try to act tough right now because you're so terrified because of me, Izuku said, mocking Katsuki. Shoto followed Katsuki as well and tried to intimidate Izuku. Don't act like you're special, Deku, Shoto said. So the half and half boy follows, sweet, how cute, as if watching a dog follow its owner. See, cut the C, Deku, and stop acting like that, Shoto said, raising his voice. Why call me that name, Such a disrespectful name such as Deku, why not just ask for my real name? Oh okay then, and not Deku, what's your damn name? Katsuki said while stuttering a bit. I go by many names, the bringer of chaos, the Dark Lord, the Great Plague, the Hellspawn, the deity of the Four Rings, the Emperor of Hell, the Destroyer of Stars, the dreaded monster of 𝗂𝗃, the Prince of Genocide, Izuku said, as he placed his hands behind his back. The two boys watched with fear and dread as Izuku's dark aura starts to violently shake as he smiles evilly at the two. But I choose the name I have bestowed upon myself many years ago, during the era of Castidius, Izuku said, as Katsuki and Shoto look on with fear and anticipation as what he's going to say. No one's POV. A man was pressing some buttons and pulling a lot of levers. He looked skinny and tall, his hair pointing upwards as some of it was a bit of a mess. He looked European, possibly from the British Isles if you want to get picky. He wore regular black reading glasses to see a few words or letters on monitor in front of him as he typed something on a board of sorts. His attire showed of how skinny he was, just proper skinny. He wore a full-on blue suit from suit collar to inside the suit he wore a white dress shirt with a plain old red necktie. To top it off, he wore regular old red sneakers that were a bit dirty, possibly from running and such. This attire he wore suited him. It added a bit of formal with the suit and casual with the sneakers. Combine it with his looks, he looked rather adventurous and mysterious. The room looked rather dark and a bit unkempt, making it look rather old and grimy, added with the bluish hue of light, making it look mysterious. It had 4 oddly shaped pillars that looked a bit grimy to hold. In the center was a console of sorts. It looked broken and a bit of a mess with some wires and bits of machinery popping out. It also had the same bluish color on the console illuminating the buttons and levers. On the top of the console, a piece of it protruded long, thick wires that connected to other parts of the room. The console was lifted up by a platform that lifted itself up by another platform connecting it to a set of stairs that came from the entranceway. Its walls had bronze colors to it as it had small supporting beams colored a dark brown curved to make the room feel domed-shaped. The walls also had some circular bronze plates within dark brown outline. The man was just analyzing something on a monitor of his, trying to figure out what it was because of its strange physiology. While he was figuring out what it was, a sliding door opened. It revealed two adult women walking out of her assumed hallway as the door closed behind them. The woman on the right had black hair tied into a fluffy ponytail arching on top of her head. She wore a tanned jacket buttoned halfway. She wore a dark red shirt under the jacket, not seen that much. She wore regular-sized jeans with sneakers as well. This time hers is black with white laces. The woman on the left was a bit taller than the woman on the right. She was ginger, meaning she had reddish hair that she didn't tie whatsoever. She wore a black jacket with black to match. Her shoes were plain old fancy flip-flops people wear. The woman on the right approached the man with a worried look on her face. She stood beside him wanting to rub his shoulder but couldn't because she didn't want to bug him either. She decided to speak up instead and talk to him. The woman on the left just stood there by the door wanting to stay out of the conversation. She wanted to be with her own thoughts for a while. "Doctor, are you okay? You look rather," she asked, worried because of how neutral his expression is. "Well, because I feel well, Martha, don't need to worry." The man now named Doctor said while not breaking eye contact with the console and the monitor. "You sure?" Because of all that happened with Jen Dash, before the girl now known as Martha could finish her statement. The doctor quickly interrupted her. "It is not about what happened to Jenny. I'm just busy, that's all." The doctor said, still not breaking eye contact with his monitor. "Doctor, I know it's hard to lose a loved one, like her. Believe me, I also lost someone I love too. I understand the feeling, I really do." Martha said, trying to sympathize with the doctor. "You don't," the doctor said in reply coldly. "Doctor, you don't have to hide your feelings. Me and Donna are here for you," Martha said, trying to reassure the doctor as he still was focused on other things. Martha was slowly getting annoyed because she was talking with him and he won't listen or reply. "Doctor, are you even listening?" Martha asked the doctor. "I am Martha. I really am. I just don't want to talk about it. Can't. That." The doctor said coldly once more, still not looking at her directly. "At least look at me when saying so," Martha said as the doctor grew tired of the bickering between them. The doctor stopped pressing buttons and looking at his monitor. He removes his reading glasses, folding them and placing it in his suit's coat pocket. He then looks at Martha in the eye, showing her why he wouldn't look at her straight in the face. She went quiet and stood still as she was shocked to see his eyes. His eyes were dead, lifeless, empty, and tired. The color in his once full of life eyes were now empty, just a bland gray shade. He looked drained and tired, his face still wearing its mutual expression. He showed her his true self, or his actual feeling that wasn't hidden through fake enthusiasm and joy. His expression represented his age. He lived for too long. He knew his time shouldn't have ended already, but death knew it had other plans. So he had the burden of bearing all the guilt of being the only surviving veteran of the last great time war. Martha didn't know what to do in this situation. She was just shocked to see this doctor in front of her. The once young and sassy doctor, now tired and sorrowful. The change left her in silence, somehow finding it hard to speak or communicate words. The doctor noticed this and shook his head slowly before walking past the shocked girl. He walked up to the door. The girl on the left was standing by. She had watched the scene unfold and knew he needed some time to himself. "Donna, please move," the doctor said, wanting to leave the console room for a while. "Sure thing," Donna said as she moved away from the door and allowed the doctor to enter the hallway behind it. Before he did so, Donna patted and rubbed his shoulder, somehow comforting him a bit before he enters the door and leaves. The door made a thump noise as it closed, leaving only Martha and Donna in the room. An awkward silence in the atmosphere as neither of them knew how to follow up a conversation after that. Donna just walked to one of the seats and so did Martha. Sitting beside each other as Martha slouched a bit on the seat with her right hand placed on her forehead. Donna just sitting down a bit, reclining into the seat looking for comfort. "Sigh, I just can't believe it," Martha said, still slouching on the seat. "Believe what?" "That the doctor's actually like that." Donna said bluntly. How he's actually like that," Martha said, confirming Donna's question. "You just don't need to stress over that. Sometimes he may seem like that Donna said before she was interrupted by Martha. "He's always like that. He's always so quiet about his emotions or how he feels. And when you ask him about it, he just shrugs it off like nothing happened." Martha said, a bit frustrated at the doctor's actions. "He has his reasons, Martha, it's just She was interrupted once again by Martha, who quickly replied. "Reasons like what?" "He can't always be quiet about his emotions. It isn't healthy and good to bury it inside. He should know that Before Martha could finish what she will say, she was interrupted by Donna. "Oi, stop interrupting me. You won't get a proper answer if you keep on interrupting me," Donna said, as she was visibly annoyed by the constant interruptions. "Okay, sorry," Martha said, feeling bad because she went a bit overboard. "Now, as I was going to say, he has his reasons for being quiet. One of the reasons is because he doesn't want to burden you and me with the emotional baggage," Donna said, as Martha was slowly understanding his reasons. "Secondly, he thinks that he has to face his demons alone, since it was his problem and he thinks that he should only solve it," Donna said, as Martha understood where her point is and what it is. Martha honestly never thought of the doctor having his own personal demons eating him every day. She knew that he had times where he would be sad, but she never knew that he solved it by himself. She sometimes hear him say the phrase when he's alone, "The Time Lord lives too long." It made her feel bad for him even more. I never knew that, Donna," Martha said. "He didn't tell anyone about it. So it's understandable to see you not knowing about it," Donna said, making Martha look at her with some curiosity mixed with stress. "But he told you?" Martha asked Donna. "Space Boy was always honest with me. He liked to talk about his feelings when I asked him," Donna said, as Martha slouched more on her seat. "So he told you not, Emmy?" Martha said, feeling as if she wasn't trustworthy enough. "He did, but I asked him, so I think it was just me being persistent and all," Donna said, trying to reassure Martha that she's trustworthy and all. "Really?" Martha said, with a small sense of hope. "Why, yes, of course," Martha said, trying to make Martha feel better. "I know you're lying," Martha said, as she started to lie down on the chair more. "I'm sorry," Donna said, as she also started relaxing more into her seat. The two just sat there in silence for a few minutes and just thought of things by themselves. "I'm really conflicted right now. I don't know whether or not I should tell her the truth as to why the doctor acts like this. I just don't know whether or not it's right for me to tell her. I mean, she's obviously frustrated with the doctor, but how can anyone not be? I mean, she looked at him, his true self. He showed her how tired he is over his life, and all being the last of his race does that to a person. I really want to tell her but I can't, I just can't. I don't want to betray his trust. It's just so ugh," Donna thought to herself as she was having an internal crisis. Meanwhile, Martha composed herself and started to puzzle in as to why the doctor's like this. "Okay, how can I piece the puzzle that is the doctor? He did tell us he's over 900 years old. That's a start. He had children, emphasis on the word had. Jenny was such a sweet girl, it's heartbreaking to actually see her go. Maybe he truly is grieving her and trying to cope with his massive loss. Know the pain in his eyes, it was so much more that it was as if he was alone or something's he knows that me and Donna are here, so why is he alone then?" Martha thought to herself, trying to figure things out. As the two were thinking in their own little worlds, the atmosphere in the console room was just pure silence. Not a single noise coming from the both of them. Just the occasional head scratching and sigh from the two. They didn't notice that the monitor was still on, possibly left on by accident by the doctor. The monitor had a map of some sorts. It looked like a map of a certain city. A blinking green light was seen on one of the corners. The green light was blinking a lot as it was located on a place that said, Aldra Municipal School. With the doctor was walking down the hallway. Each step he took, it made a noticeable noise. Passing by different rooms of the TARDIS. His hands in his pockets, his face bearing a neutral expression once more. As he was walking, he started thinking to himself about what Martha said and what had happened to Jenny. She should have regenerated. She was like me. She was too much like me. Why did she have to go? She had so much to live for, he thought to himself, imagining all the possible destinations they would go to. Those thoughts slowly disappeared as he knew she wouldn't be able to see those locations. He continued walking down the hallway with his hands still in his pockets. His face not changing even ever so slightly. He looked fine on the outside, his face neutral with a bit of an eyebrow furrow but still neutral. But on the inside the Dr. Guilt was slowly eating him alive. He didn't know how long would it be before his guilt would consume him whole. All he knew is how cruel fate must be. He took more long steps before suddenly stopping in front of a door. The door was peculiar as it was double the size of the others. It had two large doors that looked bronze with a bit of dirt and muck on it. He saw two clean bronze doorknobs and grabbed them both. He pulled the open, revealing a magnificent room. The room was massive as it housed rows of chairs as if it were an amphitheater. It had no movie screens or anything else in the room. It had ventilation as when the doctor opened the door, he felt a refreshing amount of cold air. The most distinct part of the room as it had a large glass dome. The glass was clear and clean, showing the beauty and magnificence of the quiet cosmos. He looked at the stars with a bitter-sweet smile. He knew that he would outlive these stars that twinkle in the vast cosmos. He took a seat at the middle level of the amphitheater and sank into the comfy chair. He just wanted to relax and just watch the stars, maybe reflect from time to time, but mostly just stargazing. It's so appealing, the cosmos. No matter how long I've navigated space, it never ceases to amaze me. No one would have believed to think that these magnificent ball of gases could make something this appealing. It's extraordinary, really, and look at those little planets, so much to explore and see, so much possibilities, the doctor said as he started to have memories of all the times he had watched the cosmos and all the planets he traveled to. His face formed a smile, remembering all the companions he had while traveling. His smile slowly fading away as memories of their deaths resurfaced. From him leaving his granddaughter Susan on another planet. Adric dying on the cyber ship during his travel to prehistoric Earth. And back to the present, watching his daughter die in his arms. No matter how much he begged, she wouldn't know, couldn't regenerate. His face returned to his grieving state. He knew that people died no matter what he could do. Even if he did move on, their faces still haunted him in his dreams. They had so much to live for. Jenny had so much to see and learn. Susan just wanted to travel with her grandfather. Aldrich only wanted to see the stars with me and Jenny. My Jenny, the doctor said as tears swelled up in his eyes, threatened to pour down his eyes. And my poor Jenny, he said as tears flowed down his cheeks, no longer able to contain the grief and loss he had experienced once more. The doctor tears poured down his face as it scrunched up in sadness. He tried to wipe them off, but to no avail as they kept on pouring down. He didn't know how long he could do this anymore. He's lived for so long and experienced so much loss, it was eating him up inside. He just couldn't handle it anymore. He was tired of living for so long, it was sickening. With Martha and Donna, both Donna and Martha were still sitting down on the chair. Donna was just sitting down relaxing while Martha hugged her legs as she was in a deep sleep. Looking as if she was in peace, just resting up from the adventure they had a while ago. Meanwhile, Donna was getting a bit bored, who knew staring off into empty space was tiring and boring. So she slowly got up without rocking the chair, to not wake up the sleeping Martha. She stretched a bit, mostly her arms and back. She mainly did it just to hear the satisfying pop noise whenever anyone stretches. She then started to circling around the console room floor, just looking at the room a bit. She then noticed something about the room, something she never asked herself or the doctor before. I wonder what's those round thingies for? What's even its use? Does it contribute to lighting this room? Because if it does, then it's really bad at its job. I mean, look how dark this place is. And just look at this mucky feeling it has. Donna said, starting her rant on the design of the TARDIS interior. She then approached the console itself and placed her hand on the flat metallic part of the console. She caressed it and she kind of recoiled her hand and said, "It really is dusty here, does he clean it at least?" She said, pinching the dust on her finger, then blowing it out of her hand. She then looked at the monitor with curiosity. It was somehow still on and went to it. She turned it a certain angle that she could see properly. She was confused. "What's this?" she asked, confused, seeing a green dot on the screen blinking on some sort of map. It had some sort of written language beneath it. It looked a bit like Japanese katakana or hiragana. Is that Chinese? No, it couldn't be Chinese is longer. It's certainly not Korean, maybe Japanese. It's probably Japanese, she said as she guessed correctly. Why is this written in Japanese? Better yet, why does the doctor even have this on his screen? She asked herself out loud once more. I'll just ask him, she said before quickly walking to the hallway entrance. The doors opened as she quickly walked in and down the hallway before the doors closed, making an air-sealed noise as it did. As she walked down the long hallway, she suddenly stopped a bit. Realization hitting her like a truck. For God's sake. I don't even know where 𝗵𝗃 is, she said before just randomly checked rooms left and right. The first room she checked, it was filled with books, chairs, tables, lamps, and rows of bookshelves. She thinks that this was the library the doctor liked to talk about. She made a note to herself to visit the room later on. The second room she visited had a giant swimming pool in it. It even had showers, changing rooms, and towel stands. She was amazed he even had a pool, let alone a giant one at best. She needed to tell Martha that after she finds the doctor. The third room she visited was giant as well. It had rows of hung clothes ranging from suits to shirts too, and so on and forth. It even had women's clothing. She made it a priority to remember where this room is and try on some clothes. The final room she found had 2 giant doors. She thinks she found the room where the doctor is and opened it. She was faced with relaxing cold air, her face filled with relief. She then opened her eyes once more and stood at awe. She saw an entire room that was as if it were a theater with rows of seats that looked extremely comfy. The best part was it had a view of the space and its beauty. Donna knew that space must have looked appealing, but she never knew how magnificent it could be. Even if it was empty, just filled with distant stars and such, it had such relaxing and vibrant colors. She could watch space for hours, but she had to call the doctor. Now where could Space Boy be? Donna asked herself as she looked around the theater and saw a figure sitting down on one of the chairs, slouching a bit. She knew that it was the doctor, so she approached him, walking down some stairs, reaching to him. When she reached him, she was about to surprise him before she heard quite sobbing. She froze in her tracks. And she listened in if she sure if the doctor was crying. For a while she heard the sobbing was coming from indeed the doctor. She slowly approached the crying man, not before accidentally hitting her foot on one of the chairs, startling the doctor, who snapped his attention to Donna. When he saw her, they had an awkward look at each other, until Donna decided to break the silence. "Hey there, doctor, so what you doin'?" she said before flashing an awkward smile at him. The doctor quickly tried hiding his tear-ridden face from Donna by turning away and trying to wipe away his tears. Donna slowly approached the doctor, not wanting to alarm him further. The doctor could hear her footsteps and said out loud with a bit of a hic and stutter in his voice, Fine hic Donna. Why you don't need to hic see come here anef further. Hicks, the doctor said, trying to compose himself. It broke Donna's heart to see him crying or to see any of her friends or relatives crying. She suddenly walked up to him and grabbed his shoulders, startling the doctor quite a bit. She pulled him to face her face to face, and what she saw broke her heart more and more. His face was covered in dried-up tears mixed with newly produced ones. His face contorted because of how much crying he has done. His face filled with grief and sadness. He was trying to smile and go back to being neutral once more. He tried and tried to compose himself, but it was to no avail once more. It brought a bit of tears to her eyes because of how he was trying to act like he's fine but truly wasn't. Donna slowly cupped the doctor's cheeks and looked at him in the eye. He tried to move his head sideways and not look at her. He didn't want to be vulnerable in front of her, but she kept on persisting and saying, it's okay, doctor, you can cry in front of me, won't judge you, I won't, I promise," Donna said while looking at her eye to eye, starting to listen to her as some tears started swelling up more. "You can cry, doctor, it's fine, just let it out, I know it hurts, but it's okay to vent it out," she said as the doctor's tears started to slowly fall down his eyes with each word she said. "So just let it out, okay? Donna's here, doctor, it's okay," she said as the doctor started to cry once more as he let out all his pent-up sadness and grief he kept ever since Jenny died. Donna saw this and a small tear fell from her eye as she ran up and wrapped the doctor in a hug. As the doctor cried into her shoulder, wrapping his arms around her as well, finding comfort in her, and just cried once more. While he was crying, he started mumbling as well unintentionally. "I'm sorry, so sorry, Jenny, W wasn't strong enough," the doctor said as he hugged Donna tighter once more. Donna heard this and rubbed his back and comforted him once more. She then spoke to him, saying and trying to reassure him, "You did what you could, doctor, and that was enough. You did what you could," she said as the doctor started crying harder into her shoulder. But the doctor was interrupted by Donna saying, "You were there for her, doctor, that was enough," Donna said to the doctor, rubbing his back, comforting him in the process. Silence was the doctor's reply as he understood Donna's point and slowly accepting it. They stood there standing there for a while. The doctor's tears slowly stop as he relaxes into the comforting hug. Donna still comforting him the best she could, even if he was no longer crying as hard as he was a while ago. The doctor honestly loved the hug he was getting. He never knew how warm and comforting they were for a long time. After a few minutes or so, the doctor stopped crying as the tears in his eyes dried up. The only thing that remained was Donna's comforting hug. He tapped Donna's back gently a few times as a signal of she can let go now. Donna didn't understand it immediately and thought of it as just a simple gesture and patted his back in return. The doctor snickered a bit at what Donna did in return and said to her, "Donna, I'm fine now. You can let go." The doctor said as Donna didn't let go and asked him, "Are you sure? Because you like to lie quite a lot." Donna said stubbornly as she didn't let go just yet. "I'm definitely sure, Donna, totally sure. A bit sure, maybe sure." Either way, the hug was nice. The doctor said not sure himself if he was fine or not. It was honestly a mystery to him. "Fine, I'm gonna let go now. So you better be okay, got it, mister?" Donna said as she slowly unwrapped her arms around him. "Donna, just get over with it," the doctor said, growing a bit impatient at Donna's actions. "Fine then. You don't need to shout, space boy," Donna said as she lets go of him and sees if he's gotten better. "You don't need to shout as well," the doctor replied back, raising his voice as well. "Oi, watch it, space boy," Donna said, playfully threatening him. "How mature, Donna, how mature," the doctor said, teasing Donna a bit. "Wow," Donna said, pretending to be shocked and hurt at what the doctor said. Both of them had a stare down, none of them faltering as they glared daggers at each other. Before things could escalate further, they both suddenly burst into laughter. Donna laughing hysterically, wheezing in the process. The doctor laughing as well, holding his abdomen at how strong his laughter is and how it kind of hurt. "That was fun," the doctor said as he wipes of a small tear and flicks it off of him. He then places both of his hands into his pockets. "Yeah, it was," Donna said in reply, composing herself a bit. "Just some banter here and then," the doctor said as Donna nodded in agreement. "So do you feel better now?" Donna said, concerned if the doctor's doing much better than how he was minutes ago. "A bit better than a while ago," the doctor said truthfully, still some guilt lingering inside of him. "Sigh, at least it's better," Donna said, a bit disappointed that she wasn't able to comfort him enough. "Donna, don't be disappointed, you were there for me. That's enough," the doctor said, using Donna's own words on her, being a bit cheeky in the process. "Real funny there, space boy," Donna said sarcastically, turning away from him and rolling her eyes in the process. "I aim to please," the doctor said, placing his arms behind his back and going into a pose, while showing of his cheeky smile in the process. Donna rolled her eyes more and sighed, making her sound like she's irked by his actions. He stopped posing and laughed at her being irked, being cheeky even more. Yeah. "I get it, you're funny. Haha, see, I'm laughing. How funny," Donna said sarcastically. "I might as well be a comedian," the doctor replied. "A bad one at that," Donna quickly replied, causing the doctor to look at her, feigning hurt feelings. "Really, Donna?" the doctor said, trying to be the mature one between them. "So when I'm the cheeky one, you act like the mature one?" Donna said in outrage, causing the doctor to chuckle a bit and say, "Might as well bim the 903-year-old here," the doctor said, placing his hands in his pockets and acting a bit smug. "Oi, don't play the older than mean card. You just won't admit to being annoying and cheeky," Donna said, getting annoyed at the doctor's antics. "Why did you find me?" the doctor said, going off topic, making Donna tense up. 𝗬𝗚𝗚𝗧𝗔𝗂𝗪𝗔, Donna said, stuttering a bit, remembering she forgot to tell him about the blinking green light. The doctor said, worried that something happened. To the TARDIS console. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗲 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 was suddenly interrupted by the doctor. Tell me something. The doctor said, looking at her in the eye, worried if something serious had happened. I forgot to tell you something about a light dash, Donna interrupted once more by the doctor. Was it green? The doctor said as his face went pale. Why yes, and it had some Japanese O on it, Donna said as she was confused as to why the doctor would go pale. Oh no, the doctor said before suddenly running out of the room, rushing up the stairs and pushing the doors open, causing a loud bang. Wait, doctor, where are you going? Donna asked the doctor, chasing after him, wanting an answer. Don, we don't have that much time. The doctor replied before dashing down the long hallway as Donna followed suit, wanting to catch up with him. Doctor's POV. I was running down the hallway, passing rows of doors leading to various of rooms. My footsteps making noticeable sounds echoing down the hallway. I can hear Donna calling out my name, asking me to slow down. I couldn't slow down, I already was ahead of her by a lot. I needed to go to the control room quickly and go to Japan. Not my Japan, but a parallel Japan. I don't care whatever the process is, I need to save him. I need to be fast enough, I need to be quick enough, I need to be there, I need to be with my son, my Izuku, I thought to myself, inching closer to the console room entrance doors. Still able to hear Donna's pleas for me to slow down. I quickly stand by the door as it opened. I dashed into the console floor, waking up a sleeping Martha. I ran to the console and went to the travel commands panel. Martha looked at me confused and a bit hazy. Doctor, what were you doing here? Martha said to me, a bit droopy, possibly a bit startled from her awakening. I couldn't reply since I was focused in typing in the direct coordinates to enter my son's Japan. As I was typing down the coordinates, someone suddenly popped out from the hallway door. I turned my head to see Donna, possibly tired from all the running. I turned my attention back to the console and type in the final codes for the travel. As I was typing, I could hear Donna say, "Oi, what was that for?" Donna said she sounded angry. I needed to apologize, but I don't have the time, surprisingly. I entered the last code, causing the console to make this beeping noise. Suddenly one of the console's flat panels opened, revealing a large secondary panel with a blue orb hooked up into a machine with a few wires coming out of it. Beside it was a keyhole that fitted the TARDIS's entrance keyhole. I grabbed the TARDIS key from my briefs pocket and was about to put it in until Donna interrupted me. She said to me, making me lose my focus a bit, bugging me a bit. Oi, doctor. What even is that thing? She asked me as I looked at her, pointing at the blue orb hooked up to a machine. Martha was also staring at the thing, rubbing her eyes as well. What is that? Martha said while rubbing her eyes some more. I don't have the time to tell you, I said as I placed the key in the hole and slowly turned it, causing it to reveal a button covered in a glass case. I look at it for a while before smashing my fist onto it, causing the TARDIS to go into overdrive mode. Before it could go anywhere else, I held onto the panel as support and said out loud, "Allons, why?" I said as the TARDIS shook violently, meaning it's taking us to another universe. I honestly hope we'll make it there safe, I thought to myself, only having one thought in my mind. Narrator's POV. An unknown land was only seen, shrouded with mystery. Filled with trees, thin, long and curvy trees. The ground had regular patches of grass surrounding the tree, some even grouping up, covering the floor with grass. The middle of the ground was shaved of all of its abundant grass, making a pathway filled with rocks and soil. It would seem to be a regular old forest located anywhere in a rural area. But it was different, for you see it little to no woodland animals such as bears, wolves, rabbit, fowl or any insects at all. No sign of life lived in this forest, just the quiet noise of nature. But the most eerie part of this land was how it was filled with thin, unending mist. The mist was everywhere in the forest, not allowing that much light to pass through just a small bit. It made the trees' leaves look like dark clouds covering the night sky. It hid small bumps on the forest floor, making it easy to trip for unsuspecting victims. The worst part was what the mist did for the trees. Their long, curvy, and thin structure could be mistaken as a silhouette of a mangled being. The atmosphere in the forest seemed tense and quiet. It was almost unforgiving at times, making it seem creepy and mysterious, making anyone who walks into this forest seem on edge. A frail boy was seen lying down on the forest floor, his head laid on a log for support and some form of comfort. The boy seemingly was asleep or unconscious, ignorant of his surroundings. It looked as if he was having a peaceful dream, as if a weight had been lifted of his own shoulders. Sadly, some dreams come to an end as the boy shook a bit, eliciting his body to wake up. His face scrunched up a bit before he turned to his side to fall back to sleep. His stubborn actions didn't help him as his body was now fully awake, so he had to awaken as well. He turned once more, making his body lay on the ground flatly, his face still scrunched before stopping. As his eyelids slowly opened, revealing his green eyes adjusting to the sudden wake-up. He slowly sat up, still not noticing the forest surrounding him, rubbing his right eye with his right fist, yawning and saying, "Yawn, that was a good nap, maybe I'll try napping like that again," he said out loud, smiling hazily, still wanting to take a nap once more. "Now, what time is it?" he said, looking around for a watch or clock on the forest floor, shaking the grass a bit. It was before long when he realized that he wasn't sleeping on his bed or in his room at all, but was in some sort of R with grass. He then exclaimed, "What? Where am I?" he said, questioning his surroundings and his current location. He suddenly stood up from the ground and looked around, expecting to see something else, only to be met with a forest filled with curved trees and a thin but ominous mist. He started hyperventilating because of his circumstances. At first I was about to be beaten by 𝗧𝗵𝗃 and 𝗧𝗵𝗍. Then some strange shadow thing stops time and belittles me, then when I answer back I get beaten you up, he says as his heart starts to palpitate, making him grip his chest, accompanied by the feeling of dread. "And now I'm in some sort of foggy forests," he said as tears fell from his eyes and he fell to his knees, sobbing and stressed as he felt as if he couldn't breathe properly. His lips quivered as his body couldn't take the stress. He wanted to think of today as a sick dream. He just wanted to live on with his life in peace and follow his dream even when others interfere with it. Is it always like this? Wird weird stuff happening to me, he said as his tears streamed down his cheeks. I just want a break, I want a hug, I want to be treated properly, I want a mama and papa, he said, wanting some comfort as his 10-year-old mind has been put to its limit. He wants to feel a gentle and warm hug from his parents, something most children don't receive it often but is cherished. He just wants at least some bit of comfort as he was going through a panic attack. His mouth was dry, a sort of bile filing up his throat, his heart palpitating. His breath hitched and trouble with breathing at times. He felt dizzy as his eyes spun and shook a bit, tears streaming down his cheeks. His two hands gripping the sides of his head, pulling on his hair in the process. Sweat poured down his face, mixing with his tears. His eyes dilating back and forth, still shaking, and probably due to the shaking. Izuku wasn't really in the right state of mind as his feeling were everywhere, but the most profound one is the feeling of utter panic evident in his eyes. As if he dreads what would happen next, what would add on to the stress. He felt as if he were to snap in half with the amount of pressure. He was going to pass out in any minute before a loud noise was heard. His senses were on high alert as he was scared as to what's in the forest. He feared the unknown monsters that may lurk in this forest as his body became jittery. His tears stopped flowing as his teeth started to jitter. He slowly stood up, revealing the sort of dirty school uniform he wore. As he stood up, he looked around quickly, snapping his head to his sides, looking for any creatures that may be lurking. He checked and saw nothing slugging on the ground, nothing swinging on the trees or hiding behind it. He saw nothing moving the bushes of any sort of shadow he could pinpoint. There was nothing to his sides. He feared what was behind him or something not able to be seen in his peripheral vision. He slowly convinced himself to turn around quickly, trying to get the deed over with in a flash. Okay, Izuku, why you can do this? Don't be nervous. There's no such things as monsters, he said to himself, trying to reassure his panicked mind. As he slowly turned around to see what shocked him the most. A door appeared out of nowhere. It was surrounded by lush leaves that came from nowhere as well. The door was surrounded by smooth polished stone that has seemed to age. Some parts of it was covered by the leaves and small thin pieces of trees. A path of stone tiles was somehow made from thin air trying to blend in with the dirt path. The stone path was curved as it didn't want to overlap the tree and small forest bump beside it. Then there was the giant door. The door was made out of mahogany as it held no form of splinter or bump. Pure smooth mahogany doors. At the top of the door was some sort of lowered mahogany ceiling. It had a certain design to it, strange to the young boy. The boy was confused, shocked, amazed, and horrified seeing a giant door appear out of nowhere. He started to build up another mini panic attack as he stood there frozen in shock. He quickly shook it off and approached the door still shaky and nervous. He walked up to the door seemingly about to open it before he goes off to the side. When he reached onto the side he walked past it and looked behind it, seeing nothing on the other end of the door. It was just the other side of the door, the same as the front side, nothing strange or different. He walked back to the front of the door and sighed in relief, knowing it may be some fake doorway. His sudden relief was clouded by the eerie thought that a door appeared out of nowhere. How did this door even get here? Who would build an unfinished doorway? He said, still inspecting the door for any suspicious parts. It's so detailed, he said in awe, still confused at the fact someone made a door. How come I didn't notice it? He asked himself as he suddenly stopped for a second. He then started to his situation once more, but more thoroughly in his mind, ignoring his surroundings once more. And maybe the door materialized out of nowhere. Like an illusion of sorts. Just like an illusion with the amount of quirks these days and what they can do, there's bound to be one that can create illusions on a whim. He thought to himself, coming up with a theory as to why the door came to be. Maybe the forest I'm currently in is an illusion as well. It could work. The evil spirit can't supposedly stop time, or was that too an illusion? Who knows? The amount of endless possibilities left to be explored is unsettling and worrisome, he said to himself, starting to reveal his logical theorizing side still within the boundaries of his 10-year-old mindset. He then starts to expect the door a bit more, and once more. He looks at it while rubbing his chin, thinking to himself. All it takes to open those possibilities to the world. He said out loud, approaching the door one step at a time. He then gently grabs the door knob, turning it a bit, his hand shaking. He was nervous. The endless possibilities frighten him. What if it's another monster? What if it's leading him to his own death? What if the spirit is behind this door? What if? He gulped and spoke out loud. Is just a gentle pull, he said, pulling the door, his hands a bit jittery, closing his eyes, afraid of what lies ahead of him. Or what waits for him inside the door. The inside of the door was a giant vortex. It kept on swirling around as if you were looking at the top of a tornado. It was bright as Izuku recoiled at how bright the vortex was. It lit up the path in front of him, being the only source of light in the forest. Its pinkish color felt relaxing. The light in its middle felt warm and comforting. It was as if you wanted to jump into it, hoping to be washed away by its swirling vortex. He went to go inside of it as if he were in a trance of sorts. The color of his green emerald eyes were now pinkish. He took long, slow steps until he was close enough to the door once more and was about to jump in. Until he gripped his head again and shook it violently, his eyes went back to the original color. He looked at the portal again, but with fear in his eyes. He slowly walked away from it, thinking to himself. What even is that? And did I even open that door? I knew it was a bad idea. He said to himself as he quickly started to back up more. He was now few feet away from the swirling vortex, close to being far away from the vortex. He was going to take a few more steps until he felt like he was being drawn closer to the door. He could only say as he felt being vacuumed closer to the door. His uniform was being closer to the vortex as the air behind him accompanied. His body was tilted, his feet and legs were the first to get vacuumed and was as if it was getting lifted off the ground. He tried to fight against it by turning the other direction and running. Come on. Legs, don't fail me now, he said as he tried sprinting the opposite direction, his legs exerting so much effort in trying to move away from the vortex. His efforts were in vain as the vortex increased its vacuum power and started to even pull leaves from trees with it. Izuku's body was now lifted into the air, still somehow going against the vortex, still trying to run as fast as he can. His body suddenly started to slow down as his legs are getting the strain from the sudden exertion. As his body soon became slower, the vortex took this opportunity. It amped up the vacuum power and made Izuku fly straight into the vortex. His body was flying to its legs first as if it were a bullet. He was too distressed and worried as he tried to find something to hold. There was nothing he could hold as he still stubbornly didn't accept what will happen to him. He got closer to the vortex. He could only bear some words before being in. Before he could finish his plea, he was into the large pink vortex. It him up whole, leaving nothing left. The forest was now quiet as Izuku suddenly disappeared, leaving it empty. After a few seconds, the vortex made the door shut itself, making a noticeable bang transition. Brought to you by Izuku, real-world POV. Both Shoto and Katsuki stood there frozen in fear, shaking as they were stared down by a being. They didn't know why they were scared. Out of all the things, they were scared of this Deku. The most useless person in their own eyes, the person who's so unfortunate to be quirkless. The person they look down upon, the person society despises so much, is making them shake in their own shoes. It was so degrading and embarrassing. The worst part was that it looked as if this Deku was basking in the pleasure of their fear, a smile filled with lunacy plastered all over his face. They weren't even sure if this was the same Deku anymore. Everything about him was odd. His eyes, they were filled with immeasurable bloodlust, a hunger for suffering. What evil hides behind those eyes? His face plastered with a sinister smile, an evil Cheshire cat grin, almost not human-like. His hair darker than usual, a mix of green and black, making a sort of dull dark shade of green. A purple aura radiates of him violently as some of it tries to wisp away into the air. The worst part of it was his facial expression, filled with a sense of smugness with a hint of lunacy. This person, monster, thing, being, or presence calls itself the varlet. The two boys still processing the information that was just given to them. Shoto decided to keep quiet and watch what's going to happen. Katsuki decides to reclaim some of his lost bravado and confront the being and saying, "T the what? T the varlet." Katsuki said, failing to hide his stutter, mixing in horribly with his comeback of sorts. "It's the varlet, you impotent swine. Your act of bravado is very poorly executed, especially with that atrocious stutter," the varlet said, catching on to Katsuki's plan. Hey, you don't know, Katsuki said, controlling his stutter a bit as he barked back at the varlet. Your reaction to my comment says it all. How pathetic. What next? You try to curse me to oblivion, the varlet said as he knew that he was several steps ahead of Katsuki. Katsuki said in defiance, knowing well that the varlet knew what he's going to do next. What a shame. It's honestly sad to see such potential go to waste, the varlet said, piquing Katsuki's interests, still on guard for his motives. Such a useful quirk, such a shame that it's been given to a primitive ape, the varlet said, showing his obvious distaste to how Katsuki uses his quirk. What the hell do you know, dickhead? Katsuki said, losing his stutter, as he raised both of his hands and set of explosions from his palms. The varlet could only watch while smirking a bit, his lunatic smile stretching even more around his face, seemingly creepy and unnatural. Katsuki took this as an insult and began to do what he does. Got nothing to say. That's what I thought, Deku-looking jackass. Katsuki said, setting off more mini explosions from his palms like firecrackers. Ha. The varlet suddenly started laughing hysterically while clapping his hands in the process. You utter fool, you think that insulting me will get you anywhere? How pitiful, a lower life form using insults as a defense mechanism. It is to be expected for such idiotic creatures, the varlet said, continuing to laugh at Katsuki's actions and personality. This greatly offended him as he started to get even more angry, even growling a bit as the explosions decreased in number, but increased in utter strength and size, him ignoring the pain he feels when using too much of it. He began to think to himself, still enraged at the insults. How dare he, how dare he insult me? I don't care what damn nickname you give yourself, varlet or hitty face. You're still a D. Katsuki said to himself, readying to charge at the varlet, setting off explosions once more. Just you wait, you confident bee. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 said as his hands started glowing even more, indicating more explosions will crackle in his hand rather than usual. Before he could charge, he was interrupted again by Shoto. This felt like deja vu, and it greatly him off once more. He growled and nudged Shoto's hand off his shoulder and said, "What the F is it this time, ICFer?" 𝗧𝗵𝗃 said, annoyed still. "You can't just charge at him, we need to plan," Shoto said, trying to convince 𝗧𝗵𝗃. "What damn plan is needed when we're two people?" "I swear to Kami-sama you're so effed," 𝗧𝗵𝗃 said, barking at Shoto once more. Shoto said, pointing out the menacing aura surrounding the varlet. "If I can overpower him with just one of my explosions, then you're but his grass," 𝗧𝗵𝗃 said, threatening Shoto, not listening to him. Shoto stared at 𝗧𝗵𝗃 in disbelief, annoyed that he's still this stubborn. He simply lets go of 𝗧𝗵𝗃's shoulder and says, "You know what? Be my guest," Shoto said, making 𝗧𝗵𝗃 smirk, replying. "F knew it," 𝗧𝗵𝗃 said before looking at the varlet once more, staring at him in the eyes. He got into a stance ready to charge at the varlet, his explosions detonating violently in his palm, a wicked grin plastered all over his face. Still blinded by his rage and arrogance, failing to see the varlet's wicked smile in reply, they both stared down at each other, neither side backing down. The varlet still standing there, his hands behind his back, relaxed and not worried. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 ready, adrenaline rushing through his veins, ready to beat up whatever this being is. As they stared down at each other, both had separate thoughts to themselves. "Is where I will beat you up so F hard that they'll need to F build you a new body," 𝗧𝗵𝗃 thought to himself, impatiently imagining the outcome of the battle, cocky as ever. "Fufufu, I'm dying to hear some delicious screams, especially from that cocky, explosive, and illogical boy. His delectable screams will be music to my ears, I just know it," the varlet thought to himself, his smile stretching even farther as his red eyes start to shine even more, and dare I say much more evilly. "Come at me with you best shot, fufufufufu," the varlet said as he opened his arms in a welcoming motion, beckoning 𝗧𝗵𝗃 to go all out. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 then inhales sharply as 2 spurts of air come out of his nose and sang, "Eh-ah!" 𝗧𝗵𝗃 said, letting out a loud battle cry as he charged at the varlet, the explosions crackling violently from his palms as it sort of repelled him faster to the varlet. Transition brought to you by Izuku once again. With Izuku POV, I remember passing out while inside that weird vortex thingy. Why did I even enter the thing, for goodness sake? My curiosity cursing me once again. Curiosity killed the cat, for heaven's sake. It might as well killed me in the process. How frustrating and stressing. But for a few minutes of being passed out, I woke up. I still saw I was in the vortex thingy due to the pinkish swirl, and that it was the only other color in the vortex. Then all of a sudden a door had appeared out of nowhere. Once more I think it might be another door that will lead me to certain doom once more. Then strangely it opened itself up by itself. I was confused to see it open once more, revealing an empty doorway. Only revealing the vortex once more. I was going to ignore it and accept my fate by the vortex before I felt a familiar vacuum-like feeling. I was being into the door again. This time I had no other time to react as the door me in completely. I was in at the speed of a bullet, head first into the doorway. I couldn't tell what else had happened, since when I enter the vortex, I black out once more. I woke up once more. I felt as if I wasn't floating anymore. My back felt as if it were flat on a surface. I gently opened my eyes, revealing a cloudy blue sky filled with natural light. I slowly sat up, my body feeling as if it were a ratchet joint, possibly from the floating. I see a forest of sorts, multiple trees there as if they were standing in line. They were filled with lush green leaves, some trees bearing delectable fruits for harvest. I turned my head side to side, frantically trying to find some familiarity. Though this place looked quite familiar, but I don't know how familiar. I saw even more trees and rocks, birds, insects, moss and grass. I was obviously in a forest of sorts. But the question was, what forest am I currently in? Is it close to school? Is it close to my home? Is it close to my neighborhood, town, city and area? Is it even in my country once more? I start to shake again, my head dripping sweat as my throat began to day up. My breathing becoming hitched, and I had a hard time with breathing. Tears swelled up in my eyes as I felt the stress coming back again. I wanted to roll and pass out once more before, only then I could have a calm day. I feel my vision going blurred once more. I feel as if I'm going to puke. Is this the panic attack psychology books talk about? I couldn't focus properly on my thoughts, as I think I heard footsteps and ruffled bushes. I turned my head to my right to see where the noise came from. Quickly wiping my tears away once more, trying to focus on what may be in the forest with me. I saw a group of thick bushes shaking a bit, as if it were being ruffled violently. Accompanied with loud footsteps, and instead of walking or running away from the noise, I stayed for some reason. As I stayed, I heard more footsteps and two voices shouting out while, "Come back here, Deku. You damn 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟𝗘. I a female child say out loud. I froze in place as a rush of memories flowed down my mind in a second. I couldn't believe this was happening, it seemed, and was impossible. Before I could do anything else as of the moment, the bushes looked as if a person was going to go through them. I remember who will come out of that bush. It was none other than a young child at the age of 5 said. He had fluffy green and unkempt hair, his face was round and his cheeks were rosy, complemented with some freckles. The boy looked as if he were running a marathon, due to the dirt and sweat he's covered in. How could this be? This is impossible. How did I? How am I back here? I asked myself as I still stood there frozen like a stone statue, gazing at my younger self with horror and with pity, looking at my scared expression. I saw myself falling down on my knees, hard and shaking a bit. Small scuff marks covered my arms as I saw and remembered wiping my face with my arms, possibly to remove dirt. My younger self looked extremely tired and sacred as my face had a worried expression with some tears forming at the side of my eyes. It broke my heart to see my younger self put through so much stress, sort of like self-pity. How is this possible? Is this another illusion or something? It might be, no, it must be. Time travel isn't possible. Why yet? This is just L like the ominous FF forest and the weird D door all over again. I say to myself, trying to find another reasonable explanation to this even weirder situation I'm in. I heard the two distant voices get closer as I think they were close to the bush, and I hear one of them saying, "Come on, hurry up. I think Deku's past this bush or something." I heard one of the voices say as it was accompanied by a crackling noise. "It is obvious that we just saw him go through it, didn't we?" A monotone voice said, stating the obvious. "Hey, don't you think I know the dash?" The other voice was suddenly interrupted by the monotone voice saying, "No time to argue, he might get away." I hear the monotone one say, making the other one reply. "You right," I heard her say lowly, trying not to make the other voice hear her reply. I looked at my younger self and then back to the bush, knowing who is behind the bush at this very moment. My younger self also knew that as I saw him tiredly try getting up and running. It was saddening to know what would happen next as I saw myself fall over, possibly from how hard I placed pressure on my young body back then. 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗍𝗍𝗍 can do it. I hear my younger self say as he lifts himself up with his fragile arms before flopping back to the ground quickly, face first. "Come on, I believe in you, little me." I say to my younger self, trying to encourage myself and him. But he seemingly doesn't hear me or ignoring me, as I watch myself still struggling to get up. I then hear the bushes start getting ruffled and the voices talking once more and whining and complaining about it. I hate these damn bushes and their stupid thorns." I heard the loud voice say as she continues to struggle in the big and tight spaces of the bush. "I know these are annoying, 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗍𝗍𝗍. I got pricked," I heard the monotone voice say as she took a sharp inhale from the sudden thorn lodged in her thumb. "I just want to teach you a lesson, you damn bush. So get out of the damn way." I hear a younger 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗍𝗍 say, still struggling to wiggle through the bushes. I look on in fear as I see younger me is also in the same state of fear. I see him put even more effort into trying to push his already exhausted body to its limit. He places both of his elbows onto the ground and tries to lift up his exhausted torso upward, sort of in a plank form. He slowly pushes himself second by second as the sound of the ruffling was getting closer. I ran to my younger self and tried helping him up. I went and tried to grab both of his arms to lift him up. But surprisingly my hands went through his arms as I saw them on the opposite side of his, as if I were a ghost. I look on with horror as I thought I had become a ghost or an observer watching my younger self struggle even more. 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗃𝗫𝗵𝗃 name I is this. I say to myself, still in shock as I recoiled in fear, falling to the ground across of my younger self who looked like he was getting up already. As I looked at my hands in horror, I ignored my younger self's problem. I tried waving my arms around and checking if it was okay and that the stress was making me see some things. As I was examining myself looking at my arms with worry, I had the idea to direct my hand in the direct sunlight. As I looked up and quickly blocked the sun's rays glaring at my eyes with my arm, I saw something that made me go deathly pale. I said out loud, looking at my now transparent arm as the sun's rays went through it as if nothing was blocking it. I quickly recoiled my arm back as I placed them on my lap. I looked at both of them, worry and fear filling my eyes as stress was taking over me once again. I even began to question myself once more, even saying things among the lines of, "Am I dead? Am I arms L like that? Am I a ghost?" I said out loud, shaking my hands even more as my mouth was held agape from the shock and worry. As I was still in my shock, I hear noises coming from my younger self, as my head snaps to his direction, wanting to know what had happened to him after those few seconds. I look on with small pride as I saw the tired boy standing up properly, still shaking a bit as his legs and waist wobbled. He then whispered something that I vaguely remember when I was younger. "I eat it," I hear my younger self say in awe at his accomplishment. I my current self also in small awe at him. The moment of pride was suddenly over as I heard the rustling in the bushes became even louder as I feared 𝗧𝗵𝗵 and 𝗧𝗕𝗁 were already close to escaping the thorny labyrinth. I hear both 𝗧𝗵𝗵 and 𝗧𝗕𝗁 say clearly, "Come on, hurry up more 𝗧𝗕𝗁. Deku might get away because of your slow butt." I hear 𝗧𝗵𝗵 say, cursing at 𝗧𝗕𝗁 once more, just like Katsuki. "I'm trying my best and don't worry, I'm fine if you cared at all." I hear 𝗧𝗕𝗁 say sarcastically, feeling her rolling her eyes back at 𝗧𝗵𝗵 in response. Both me and younger me froze in fear, knowing that if I don't act I'll surely get caught, at least my younger self will get caught. As I saw him struggling to walk as his right leg was limping, being forced to move a strained muscle. I quickly got up and tried to help him, failing in the process, remembering that I can't touch him with my arms. I looked on with horror as I saw both 𝗧𝗵𝗵 and 𝗧𝗕𝗁 exiting the bush, both of them covered in leaves. As they saw younger me limping away from them quicker, as 𝗧𝗵𝗵 prepares her quirk as small explosions crackle in her palm. 𝗧𝗕𝗁 preparing her fire quirk as her arms suddenly lit aflame. I saw the look in my younger self's eyes, a look of fear and dread as he tried running while his legs were still limping away. I wanted to help as I immediately run to my younger self and try to block him from harm's way as I see 𝗧𝗕𝗁 throw a small unstable fireball at my younger self. I was about to close my eyes, embracing the burning impact, before I felt a feeling. I looked to my right to see another door appear out of nowhere in the bushes. It was a regular white door see at Western homes or doctor's offices in Japan, depending where you are, of course. I saw its own door opening up by itself, a white vortex inside of the frame. My eyes widened in terror, but before I could do anything I was into it. This time with no struggle and no resistance from me or my surroundings, as before I was consumed by the door. I saw my younger self fallen on the ground, looking at both 𝗧𝗵𝗵 and 𝗧𝗕𝗁 in terror as tears formed, begging to fall out of his eyes. As he looked on as an unstable fireball was coming at him and hands full of explosions threatening to pounce on him. I saw in a few seconds him closing his eyes as a small tear fell down his right cheek, accepting his fate. As all I could do was watch in horror, remembering vividly what would happen to me that horrible day. That day that would start the suffering I'll endure for 6 long years. I looked on one last time, a tear falling down my left cheek, knowing what will come as my green hair cover my eyes. Then the white door closed on me, leaving me floating once more in the swirling vortex, this time painted in a white hue. I close my eyes as I slowly pass out once more, no other thoughts in my mind, only except one. I thought, what will happen next? I say to myself before I fully pass out, still floating through the endless white vortex. Narrator's POV. A white portal appeared out of nowhere and came from nowhere. It was black and white, swirling together, mixing with each other. As it created this gray surface, almost fully replacing the white but not fully, as small blotches of white still remain in the pool of swirling black and gray. Looking at the portal will entrance anyone from young to old, no matter the cost. As a person would look at it, it's as if you get into the cyclone of monotone colors. The cyclone looked dangerous, as you never know what's on the other side, or who will be its next victim. Suddenly, in a flash of light, a green-haired boy was spat out of the black and white portal. He was thrown onto the ground with great force, but not enough to harm him. He landed face first to the ground, causing his body to lay flat onto the ground, making a noticeable thud noise as he made contact with said ground. Izuku lifted his face up from the ground, small granules of dust on his face. He lifted himself up from the fall before falling back down again, noticing how his arms were a bit hurt from the fall, and decided to move his torso, making it lay flat on his back as he looked at the ceiling with beady eyes. Before he could think to himself, he heard of swooshing noises come from in front of him. He lifted his head up to see what's in front of him, and he saw that the portal was slowly shrinking in size, before slowly but surely vanishing from thin air. The once large black and white portal had just vanished in a poof. Izuku saw this and reacted like nothing had happened, since he wasn't as surprised anymore. He was planning on laying his head back flat on the ground and gaze at the white ceiling, before his plan was interrupted by the presence of a light above him. He was confused and dreading what's ahead of him. Why is it so bright here? Izuku thought to himself in intrigue. He winced at the sudden glare of light that came in front of him. He then blocked the light from glaring at his eyes even more by using his right hand. It's so annoying. Whatever this light may be, it's well over a few dozen watts. Izuku thought to himself before suddenly getting up. He then sat down on the ground in a crossed-legged position. He rubbed both of his dry eyes to elicit some type of moisture so the irritation might stop. After that, he focused on tidying himself up a bit, rubbing off some dust off his uniform top and bottom, before moving on to his face by rubbing it with a napkin. Izuku then placed the napkin he had back to his coat pocket and ruffled his uniform a bit once more, as he started getting up using his left arm to support himself as he did so. He then was finally stood up and removed some dirt once more from his shoulders, surprisingly not looking forward yet to behold at the sight. He then stopped cleaning himself and looked forward with a small amount of hope in his soul. I hope somewhere n dash, but before Izuku could finish his sentence, he suddenly stopped talking and froze in shock, his mouth agape and his eyes wide open, slightly shaking a bit, as he then stuttered out in fear and shock. No. Why am I back here? Izuku said, questioning his circumstances. He currently was looking at a door across a long hallway with other doors. The door was the same plain, smooth, and gray doors with similar silver doorknobs. But this door was special as it had a silver plaque beside it with the words written on it, as others had no plaques beside it with names on it. The plaque read out in kanji, or Dr. Edo Yamaha, in regular English. He gulped at the sight of the door, freezing momentarily, before stuttering out in fear and worry as his hands shook a bit at the sight. This is where it all started. This is where 𝗵𝗃 Izuku then rephrased, saying, No, this is where my hell started, Izuku said as memories of his tormented youth flashes his eyes in a moment. Izuku knew what he had to do, but he didn't know if he had the strength to do it. His circumstances screamed at him as the hallway in front of was all too familiar. He remembered this exact hallway when he went to this office to get his quirk results revealed to him. The only difference now is that the hallway looks twisted from reality, as it was way longer and looked eerie. He knew he had no choice but to go down this hallway and enter whatever lies behind that door. So he started casually walking down the hallway, still anxious and fearful for what is to come. As for the meantime, her retreated back to his thoughts for some form of comfort. I don't know if I can do this, I don't know. If I have the strength to do it. Izuku said to himself, doubting himself, and starting to doubt his abilities and such. his insecurities arising after being buried deep inside of him for so long. He then continued, his eyes shaking a bit. Am I even strong enough to even do this? Izuku asked himself truthfully. What if it's like last time? What if I see myself hurt again? I can't relive that. Watching your pain like a movie. It's sickening to the core. Izuku said to himself in protest to what he's doing. This am I punishment for answering back to him. Did I even answer back? Am I and myself our righteous self? Izuku said, tightening his fist in anger. His fist showing veins already as if they were ready to blow up. As Izuku shakes in anger, wanting not to follow suit with his plan. I don't want to follow suit to this plan. I don't want to get hurt anymore, Izuku said, discouraged at the sight of the doctor's office in front of him. Izuku then shook his head in opposition and said out loud to himself. No, Izuku. Why you have to be brave? Even if you're scared. Or even if your circumstances are not looking good for you. You have to keep on pushing forward. No matter what. Izuku said, motivating himself. As he continued on down the hall, walking closer and closer to Dr. Ito Yamaharu's office. As he finally got close to the door, his hand inches away from the doorknob. His hand suddenly stopping itself from making contact to it. His hand shaking as a single droplet of sweat slid down his forehead. Before getting anxious or having second thoughts even further, he grabbed his left hand and gripped, stopping it from shaking. He then directed his left hand and let it, placing it on the cold silver doorknob. Gripping it once again as his left hand started shaking. He forced his hand to turn the doorknob, opening the door a bit. He opened the door in a swift motion, hoping that his assumption was right and that no one was in the office other than Dr. Yamaharu. His hopes were immediately shattered at the sight of the worst possibility. He saw 4 people in the room instead of the expected 1 person. 2 had green hair and emerald eyes, and 2 who had blonde hair and blue eyes. A young green-haired boy sitting on a young green-haired woman's lap. And a blonde girl sitting on a blonde man's lap. A small family of sorts was in this room. And the attention to detail, it's unheard of, Izuku stuttered out in disbelief. His mouth went agape from the utter attention to detail of what the room looked like when he was younger. It wasn't twisted or distorted like the hallway was, as it had the right proportions and the right size. He was also shocked and unnerved at the sight of the young family, especially at the sight of the young blonde girl. As he was about to comment anything else on the situation, he heard one of the kids say out loud in a cheery voice, "Daddy, how long will Dr. Yamaharu take?" The blonde child asked, tugging on her father's dress shirt. "Soon, honey." "Soon," the blonde man said in reply. "Be patient, dear. It will be here in time, so don't worry," the young green-haired woman said. As the green-haired boy didn't reply to the conversation, as he was too busy playing with his superhero action figures on his lap. "Oh, sorry, Mommy and Daddy," the blonde child apologized. "Don't need to be sorry, dear. Mommy is just telling you to be patient," the young green-haired woman said. "Like what your mother said, dear. You don't need to be sorry," the blonde-like man said, reassuring their daughter even more. The little blonde girl just smiled at the parents' replies and saying, "Okay, Mommy and Daddy," the little girl said, hugging her father while doing so. Izuku looked on at the sight with shock as a surge of old memories flooded back to him. Walking forward, staring at the 4 intently. As he got close to the small family, he went off to the side around the green-haired woman's chair. He got a good look of the young green-haired woman and the young boy on her lap. It was her, it truly was her, as he remembered her 5 years ago. Inko Yagi, wife to Toshinori Yagi and mother to 2 children, currently 28 years old. She looked rather tired for some unknown reason. She still maintained her calm expression as her lap was preoccupied by a little cute green-haired boy. This boy, little ball of sunshine, is known as Izuku Yagi, currently at 5 years old. He looked ecstatic as he waited for his Quirk test results, but chose to bottle up his joy when his results actually came back. But for now he was playing with an All Might and Endeavor figurines he got on his birthday. Izuku looked at his younger self again with sadness and pity, his eyes watering a bit at the sight of his once happy self. where he could be free to enjoy what he liked and do what he liked without fear or anxiety. He knew what next was going to happen and chose not to look at himself after the news will be said to his younger self. He then walked a bit farther away from the table, getting close to a door. He placed his hand onto the door and turned the knob about to open it. Before suddenly stopping halfway through, his eyes darkened as it was caused by his puffy green hair. He slowly turned around once more and looked back at the four, choosing to look at the two blondes in the family, not wanting to stare at himself again. Toshinori Yagi, husband to Inko Yagi and father of two children currently aged 27 years old. He was smiling as he played with his daughter on his lap, playing games such as I Spy My Little Eye, a common game played in many parts of the world. This little one is known as Kokoro Yagi, currently 5 years old and Izuku's little twin sister. She currently was playing with her father on some I Spy in the doctor's office, pointing out some objects that were easy to describe. Izuku looked at the two with sadness as well, knowing how his younger sister will end up as in the near future. Also remembering the relationship he has with his father and how they barely even know each other at all. He scorned at the memories he's had over the years of pain and sadness. He then looked away from them in a hurry, not wanting to remember even more memories he wishes he had forgotten. He fully turns the door knob, opening the door in a huff, opening the door to see Dr. Yamaharu examining a couple of X-ray pictures. He looked at them with intricate notice to detail, examining them twice just to make sure out of all the pictures he had taken. This doesn't make any sense. Why are his X-rays so peculiar? Dr. Yamaharu said in confusion. Peculiar? Izuku asked himself. Dr. Yamaharu then lifted up Izuku's X-ray to the light in the room, as it lit up Izuku's X-ray, making it seen even more clearly. As Dr. Yamaharu kept on moving it, changing its angle from time to time, still looking at it with confusion evident in his eyes. Izuku looked on with worry at the sight. It still doesn't make any sense. His X-rays don't add up whatsoever, Dr. Yamaharu said, still confused and now bewildered at the sight. Is he having a hard time with my X-rays? Izuku asked himself once again. Dr. Yamaharu sighed in frustration as he pinched the bridge of his nose. He placed the X-ray to his side as he tried relieving his frustration. He then placed his free hand on a countertop, leaning his body onto it. He sighs once more and letting out a huff of breath and sang, "Huff, this kid's X-rays are so strange to look at and also very, very frustrating as well," Dr. Yamaharu said, beginning to pinch the bridge of his nose once more. How difficult were mine. Are assessing quirkless X-rays hard? Izuku asked himself again. Maybe I'll just examine another one. Dr. Yamaharu said while looking for another suitable X-ray. Is he even able to do that? Izuku questioned Dr. Yamaharu's methods. Dr. Yamaharu then began to look for another X-ray he could use from the organized box beside him, filled with many X-rays of Izuku's skeletal system, such as his ribs, waist, legs, and arm bones. He went through a large collection as Izuku's sweat dropped at the sight of how many X-rays Dr. Yamaharu went through. Geez, that's a bit too many X-rays, Izuku said to himself, amazed at the amount of X-rays he had. He was slowly reaching the end of the box's contents as he shuffled around it. Sweat fell from his forehead as he became nervous. He didn't know whether or not Izuku is quirkless or not, and he couldn't afford to make a grave mistake that would ruin the boy's life forever. As hope seemed lost as he reached the final X-ray, he grabbed it out of the box and examined it thoroughly. He started to look at the X-ray with widened eyes, his shock surprising Izuku in the room watching him. Dr. Yamaharu almost dropped the X-ray from the shock, leaning back onto the counter, still wearing his shocked expression. No, it can't be, he can't beat, Dr. Yamaharu said in bewilderment. He found it, didn't he? Izuku said as he grimaced at what might happen next. The X-ray, his foot, his pinky toe, it's double-jointed, is quirkless, Dr. Yamaharu said, saddened at the revelation just revealed to him. Izuku's thought went silent as he was left speechless. Dr. Yamaharu was about to say something else before he couldn't find the proper words, as he too was left speechless and didn't know how to explain it to his family. Know how to explain it to the young boy filled with hopes and dreams. He just leaned on the countertop for a while before deciding to get up and leave before grabbing Kokoro's X-rays and leaving the room. Izuku chose to stand there still knowing what next will happen, the memory still clear as day. He didn't want to relive one of the worst days of his life. Nor did he want to look at his younger self's face. The guilt that would soon follow if he did would break him completely, so he chose to stay in this room. Reflecting to himself, only himself and his thoughts. So that's the reason. I'm like this because of a double-jointed pinky toe. How rich Izuku said before falling to the ground, knees first. How rich Izuku said before falling backwards, hitting the back of his head on the door. He didn't wince in pain or flinch from the fall but just kept silent, resting his head on the door as he forcefully shut his eyes, anticipating when the news will be broken. On the other side of the door was the small family sitting on the opposite side of Dr. Yamaha. Two of the parents were sitting down on their own consecutive chairs, while their two children sat on the parents' lap. Dr. Yamaha wore a neutral expression as he had planned to break the news in a neutral tone, not to sound anti-quirkless. On the other hand, the small family waited in anticipation as the two adults had to hold their child down from going crazy from excitement. Whose results do you wish to have first? Little 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏's or little Izuku's? Dr. Yamaharu asked the small family. I want to be first. I wanna. Please pick me. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 said, jumping up and down on her father's lap from excitement. I also want to be first. Little Izuku said, also jumping up and down on his mother's lap. Izuku baby, what did mama say? 𝗵𝗃 said. Oh, to be patient and wait for the results. Sorry mama, I didn't mean to forget. Little Izuku said, a bit downcast for disappointing his mother. Oh, baby, don't be sad, mama was just reminding you, 𝗵𝗃 said, trying to reassure the child. But I forgo dash. Before Izuku could finish his sentence, 𝗵𝗃 interrupted. Babby, it's okay to forget sometimes. It's best to try and remember next time. Got it? 𝗵𝗃 said. Okay mama. Little Izuku said before burying his face into his mother's chest, hugging her in the process, as 𝗵𝗃 giggled at the sight of her baby boy. Meanwhile, with Toshinori and 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏, the situation was much more wild. Coco honey, what did I tell you about patience? Toshinori said, scolding his daughter. But daddy, I want to be first. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 said, crossing her arms. I know honey, but dash. Toshinori was suddenly interrupted by 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏. I want to be first. No. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 said, thrashing about on her father's lap. Coco. Sweetie, behave. No. 𝗵𝗃 said, finally intervening. Before 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 could finish her statement, she had been interrupted by her mother. Zip it. 𝗵𝗃 said, making a zipping motion with her hands. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 didn't take the warning lightly as she still obeyed her mother and now stood quiet. But now she had turned red and her cheeks were puffed as she pouted and had a fit in silence. Dr. Yamaharu saw this and sweat dropped at the sight, specifically at how feisty the Yagi's daughter were. Welp, your daughter's a bit feisty, Mr. and Mrs. Yagi. Dr. Yamaharu said, awkwardly trying to melt the tension. Yeah, she's a bit feisty, yeah, Toshinori said while softly patting 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏's head, trying to calm her down in the process. How about I just tell the results instead? Dr. Yamaharu said. That would be best, 𝗵𝗃 said. Well, for little Izuku, Dr. Yamaharu said, adjusting his collar once more before letting out a huff of breath. Is quirkless, Dr. Yamaharu said, bluntly, causing the family to go into shock. Toshinori looked as if his dreams had shattered right in front of him, his mouth agape further adding on to his shocked expression. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 was shocked as well, clutching her dress shirt and looking at her brother wide-eyed. 𝗵𝗃's reaction was somewhat tame, as she looked at her son with empathy. Izuku, however, had it way worse, freezing in shock from the news. Dropping both his endeavor and all might figures from the shock. Tears swelling up in his eyes as they threatened to burst out. His two little hands clutching his breathed legs as they shook from the news. Yeah. Little Izuku said in reply, not being able to muster up the proper words. It can't be true, Toshinori said, looking at the doctor for confirmation. Oni 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 said, looking at her brother with empathy in her eyes. 𝗵𝗃 stayed silent as she patted little Izuku's head, trying to console the young boy. It sadly is the truth, Mr. and Mrs. Yagi. Indeed, little Izuku has shown no signs of developing a quirk, Dr. Yamaharu said as he found difficulty even replying to the couple. I just can't believe it, 𝗵𝗃 said as she still comforted the shocked Izuku. I know it's too dash. Suddenly Dr. Yamaharu was interrupted. How about Kokoro? What are her results? Toshinori said, clinging on to a hope that his daughter may have a quirk. Oh, for little Kokoro results already. I wasn't finished with explaining little Izuku's results, Dr. Yamaharu said, shocked at the quick topic change. I need to hear her results, Doc. You can explain Izuku's later. Toshinori said. Inko looked at her husband in bewilderment, at the notion of casting aside Izuku's results first for Kokoro's. But she did want to hear Kokoro's as well to see if she wasn't also quirkless. Well, little Kokoro has a quirk that is rather peculiar, Dr. Yamaharu said as both Toshinori and Inko looked on with anticipation. For you see she has a quirk that modifies her speed, Dr. Yamaharu said. Inko said, expecting something much more extreme. That's it. Toshinori continued. Well, let me go into more d-dash. He was interrupted once more. Yay, I have a quirk. A quirk. Just like mommy and daddy. Kokoro said as she jumped up and down on her father's lap with so much excitement. Koko sweetie dash, Inko was about to scold her before Toshinori interrupted her. My daughter has a quirk. She has a quirk like mine. Whoa. Toshinori said as he jumped from his seat and celebrated with his daughter, doing small jumps as he lifted her up in the air as she giggled with her father. Inko looked at the sight embarrassingly as she saw her husband act like a child. She resisted the urge to join them as she was preoccupied with comforting her son, who was currently still frozen in shock like a statue. Her urge won as she slowly stood up with her purse and little Izuku in her arms. She gently placed him down on the chair as she went to Toshinori's side and celebrated with them. As little Izuku's stone-like expression stopped as he shook his head side to side, before looking for his mother as tears started to swell up more in his eyes. Little Izuku said as he looked for his mother, tears threatening to fall out even more. Izuku then saw his mother celebrating with his father and twin sister. They were all jolly and jumping up and down from happiness. Little Izuku wanted to have some hugs from his mother but couldn't say anything as he saw the look on their faces. They looked so preoccupied with their celebration he felt like he was being ignored. Mommy. Daddy. Izuku said once more but louder, pleading for their attention. But once again no response from them as they still kept celebrating with Koko. Dr. Yamaharu saw the look on Izuku's face with pity. He wanted to say something but didn't want to seem rude to the married couple, so he stayed quiet on the matter. Back with present Izuku, he was currently still leaning on the door processing the news of his result once again, before a bright light appears in front of him in the dark room. He winces from the sudden light blaring at him. He tries to block the light with his right hand, blocking some of it from entering his eyes. After a few seconds the light died down. Izuku places his hand back down to his side, now looking on at the source of what's emitting the once bright light. He saw another door appear in front of him, emitting a much more relaxing light than the light before. Izuku slowly stood up and looked at the door without a single overreaction whatsoever. He looked at the door with mixed feelings. He didn't know what to feel or say. It was conflicting to him if whether or not he should be thankful that the door had appeared and was going to take him away from this memory, or he should be angry because the door hadn't appeared earlier so he wouldn't have to witness this memory. He quickly shook those thoughts off as he wanted to leave the memory and go somewhere else. The pain and sadness he felt on this day is returning to him in vast amounts. He remembered watching as they celebrated and ignored his pleas of attention. He remembered as small tears fell from his eyes watching them be happy for only one of them. He didn't know what this feeling meant as he never experienced this feeling in his chest. He was a mix of angry and disappointed. He didn't know as his emotions were all over the place. He wanted to leave and bury these feelings as quick as possible. He quickly walked up to the door and grabbed the doorknob and swung the door open. The door's contents revealed another porta inside of it. It was a different colored vortex this time, and it was much more relaxed than the other portals, as it swirled much more slower and it gave of this tranquil aura. Izuku was about to hop into the portal, as he looked as if he was just to carelessly jump. But he stopped suddenly as he tightened his fist once more. He slowly turned around and facing the other door leading to Dr. Yamaharu's office. He wanted to enter the room for some odd reason. He couldn't understand it. He wanted to comfort his younger self out of his own kindness. He wanted to give himself the comfort he needed after the results were told. He slowly walked back to the door he leaned on, and grabbed the door knob tightly as he slowly opened the door, the hinges squeaking from the slow swinging. A small crack opened up as he slowly opened the door. The crack gave Izuku an ample view of seeing Dr. Yamaharu to seeing his family celebrating. As he was about to fully open the door, he suddenly froze, his body going stiff and completely stopping any sudden movement. He froze from what he saw, his eyes widening in the process. He saw his younger self crying as tears continually fell from his eyes. But his face didn't convey that much emotion, as only tears conveyed his sadness, not his face or expression, just total neutrality. Izuku couldn't bring himself to move any further, guilt slowly gnawing his heart. The sight of seeing himself and remembering being heartbroken shattered his focus. He couldn't muster up the strength to give his younger self the comfort he deserved. He felt so helpless as he knew his hug meant nothing as they couldn't see, hear, or even feel him. No matter what he could do, he knew that he couldn't even help himself. How ironic. Izuku said, "I dream of helping others. I need no matter the cost. I tell myself how can I be a hero? And I can't even help myself," Izuku said as he turned back around in shame. He slowly walked back to the door, each step he took the more shameful he feels. As he reached the door, his expression had darkened. His hair covered his eyes as a singular tear fell from his right eye. He couldn't bother even hiding the tear as he slowly fell into the portal. As he was out of the memory in a swift motion, the door slammed itself as it itself out of existence, leaving nothing. As the room was darkened once more, a small light from the crack kept the room a bit bright, before the door slowly closed itself. As the light slowly becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, before the door finally shut itself as no light was left in the room. Transition brought to you by the 8th Doctor. Izuku's POV. As I entered the swirling vortex, I suddenly blacked out. I couldn't remember why I blacked out or even understood why I blacked out. As all I felt was a feeling of floating in utter darkness, my body just motionless as if I were dead. But I couldn't be dead as I still was conscious somehow. At least some part of me was conscious. All of a sudden I feel as if I'm floating a bit faster. Then I picked up more speed. Then more and more and more and more, I started to panic. As I felt uneasy as I went faster and faster and faster, until I felt as if I were running. I tried to wake up somehow, but sadly it didn't work as I couldn't even move a muscle of my currently motionless body. My anxiety kicking in as I contemplated what would happen to me in future events. Will I go so fast that my body will burn up? Will I forever stay in this coma-like state? Will I be able to help myself? Will these speeds send me flying off the portal? I couldn't even catch a breath as my anxiety still made me think of even more and more frightening possibilities. But for a brief second, just a second, I felt as if I was getting slower. I was still going fast, but I felt my momentum slowing down just a bit. It brought me even more anxiety as it made me think of even more reasons as to why I'm slowing down. And they all had horrible endings with horrible circumstances. But as I think about more and more of what's the worst that could happen, I felt as if I was getting even slower than the first time. I felt as if I were going as fast as joggers who were just jogging for relaxation, until the speed shifted to an even slower pace as if I were now casually walking down a path. This eased my anxious thoughts as I felt I could take a breather and relax for a while as I float motionless. But those thoughts of ease were quickly washed away as I remembered what had happened not too long ago. I remembered my failure in trying to comfort my younger self, as the face I made stopped me. Was I at fault here? Was my incapability to even comfort myself the reason? I felt ashamed for wanting to even become a hero if I couldn't even comfort myself in times of need. Maybe I was right. Maybe I see. Suddenly I hear a noise. It wasn't a loud noise, but it wasn't a quiet one either. It was somewhere in the middle as I heard the creaking of an object. It had a sound that was all too familiar. That was when I made the conclusion that it was a hinge. But before I could think about anything else, I felt as if the floating feeling had gone away. As the feeling of being inside a vortex had disappeared as I felt fresh air. Thud! All of a sudden, I felt as if I crashed onto the ground once again, my face colliding on some sort of pavement. My body also following suit as it collided to the ground with an even louder thud. The collision was so painful, as I held one of my legs that got most of the brunt of the fall. That was when I opened my eyes in shock, as I looked down to see I was indeed hugging my injured leg. I then realized that the motionless floating feeling went away as I wasn't in the portal anymore. Wait, I can see again. As I realized that my eyes were open again as I could see that I had landed on pavement. I try and sit up to stop laying on the hard and uncomfortable pavement until I felt even more pain. Aya, I say out loud before lying back down to the hard pavement. I then wince in pain as I looked at my injured leg once more, realizing that the fall wasn't as good as it was. I then try again to sit up, as this time it was successful. The only problem was how painful my leg felt when lifting it up. I wince once again from the pain as I hold onto my leg to support it. I then look at my leg closely, inspecting it as I massaged some part of it to ease the pain. I then stop massaging it as it only made it worse. I then slowly push down some parts of my leg, checking where it hurts the most. That's when I pressed down on the middle part of my leg and I felt a surge of pain. Arg, I say as I recoil my hand from my injured leg. After a while the surge of pain had stopped, as I then identified where the pain originates. As it came from the middle part of my tibia. I think that's what they called it in the anatomy textbook. Anyways, I think I might have injured the middle part of my tibia. I suspect a regular injury, as I don't think I broke or fractured it, because if so I would be in unbearable pain. I then try to focus on something else to shake my mind off the stinging in my injured leg. I then take notice of my surroundings, seeing that I'm in some sort of area. Maybe a neighborhood. It could be, as I inspected the area more. Seeing walled houses with gates in the middle, it had this design and familiarity around it. This place, it looks familiar, I say out loud as I struggle to speak properly from wincing in pain. That's when it clicked for me, as I suddenly got up, ignoring the stinging pain in my leg. I limp out of this alleyway-like place and onto a main street, taking a sharp right as I limp down a way to familiar road. I then take another sharp turn, this time going left as I limp down another street. That's when I suddenly stop at the sight of a house. This house, this is where I live with them. I harbor a sense of resentment whenever I see this house in front of me. Every day whenever I would leave or enter this house, I always knew that pain and suffering would follow me. I wasn't safe from its clutches, as even in my own home it still crept up on me. I looked at this house with the same resentment and hatred, my views of it still the same. I slowly limped to the house's front door. Each limp I took, I could remember each good memory I had as it flashed before my eyes. I shook of these memories as I knew that I had to enter this house and witness another painful memory once more. As I got nearer to the house, I suddenly stop limping and bite my lip. I then start to walk properly. Each step I took, I bit my lower lip to stifle my groans of pain. As I reached to the door, inches away from it, I stop. As I went to reach for the door, before suddenly stopping, I retract my hand from the doorknob and look at it, remembering that I was like some sort of spirit, as the light illuminating the entrance went through my transparent hand, furthering my point. As I looked at my transparent hand with beady eyes, still questioning why they were ghost-like, I shook of my thoughts as I needed to head inside. I then walk up to the door, before walking through the door as I closed my eyes while doing so. No one's POV. Izuku went through the front door, phasing through the wooden matter in a matter of a few seconds, opening his eyes to see the sight of the entrance hallway of the house and its contents. He was at awe once again at the sight of how similar this hallway is to the actual hallway in his home. From how each floor panel is placed to where the lights were, the entire room is accurate to the real one. Whoa, and I thought Dr. Ito's office was accurate, he says, still in awe. One thing he could nitpick about the room was how awfully clean and shiny it was. As if it was just cleaned minutes ago, he quickly moved on from inspecting the room, and began to venture down the hallway, passing by some doors leading to empty rooms. As he was walking down the hallway, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. He then slowly walked up to a closed door. A feminine voice hummed. Izuku was confused by the humming, as he had thought that the room was empty. He then slowly peeked his head through the door, opening his eyes to see a green-haired woman facing the opposite side of him. and looks as if she's preparing food, as a joyful aura surrounded her. I wonder what Mom is doing. Izuku asked himself, confused as to why she was humming and preparing something. Izuku slowly went through the door, his entire body phasing through the matter quickly. He slowly walked up to his mother, who continued to hum while fixing something. As he already was beside his mother, he had already gotten a clear view of what his mother was preparing. It was 3 plates of his mother's special honey-glazed fried chicken dipped in sesame oil. Why did Mom make chick? Izuku suddenly interrupted himself, stopping abruptly. His mood soured as he realizes who his mother made the dish for. It's Kokoro's favorite meal, a mix of Western-type dish mixed in with Japanese-style cooking. Izuku wasn't really a fan of honey-glazed fried chicken, as he much more preferred a simple katsudon for a meal. But knowing how much his parents loved Kokoro, it was obvious that was dinner. As Izuku was about to leave the room in a sour mood, his mother stopped humming and said, "Phew, I'm finally done preparing my baby girl's favorite dinner. Now time for the plates." Inko said enthusiastically. As a green aura enveloped her, her hair floating a bit. As she lifted up a finger and pointed it to a faraway cupboard. The cupboard door opened as the knob was surrounded by the same green aura. Then 3 plates surrounded by green auras floated out of the cupboard. As it slowly whisked away from the cupboard and onto his mother's hand. Izuku watched this unfold with stars in his eyes. He's always at awe of his mother's quirk. As the 3 plated stacked themselves on each other and placed themselves on her hands. She placed them on the flat tabletop, placing the 3 plates in front of 3 seats on the 6-chair table. Izuku saw this as the stars in his eyes slowly faded away at the sight of his mother not getting a plate for him. The littlest of things forgotten by his mother, as how in later years he too was forgotten in his mother's eyes. He couldn't stand the sight of being forgotten in the most subtle way possible. As he slowly turned around and walked back to the door about to phase through it. Before he heard his mother spoke up from behind him. "I think I've forgotten something," she said as Izuku's interests piped up. As he stopped walking to the door and slowly turned his head to where his mother was. His saddened eyes filled with hope and anticipation, hoping his mother had made a mistake of forgetting him. As she then continued on with what she was going to say as Izuku was hanging from a thin rope of hope. "Oh no, I forgot to prepare the drinks," Inko said, rushing to the refrigerator, leaving a stunned Izuku. Izuku's hope was shattered, so was his heart. As his feelings were played like an instrument or some sort of toy. The hope in his eyes gone as they returned to their depressive-like state, slowly turning away once more. As he continues to walk to the door about to leave before hearing his mother's voice once more. I found it. Now time to prepare it," she said as she held bags of fruit and tea. Izuku then fully left the room, phasing through the door as his eyes were covered by his puffy green hair. His shoulders now slouched and his movements now sluggish and drained of energy. As he slowly walked down the hallway once more, passing by another couple of closed doors. Before stumbling upon a half-open door and hearing noises come from the room. Izuku didn't care for what was inside the room as his curiosity was drained out of him. Only wanting to get this memory reliving thingy over with, as he slowly continued down the hallway. But only 3 steps away from the door, he heard 2 voices conversing with each other. One voice of a grown adult male and one of a young girl. "I dunno, Daddy, I'm not sure," a little girl said, the tone of her voice somewhat unsure. "It's okay, honey, Daddy's here, don't worry," a male voice said, reassuring the young child. Izuku's eyes widen in surprise, as he slowly walks back and wanted to look beyond the door and see what was happening. As he peeped through the door once more, only his head and neck through the door. As he wanted to only take a peek and leave immediately after he took said peek. As he saw his father and sister in the living room, the chairs and coffee table moved to the side for more space in the center. What's going on exactly? Izuku asked himself, still peeking, not keeping true to his decision of leaving immediately afterwards. Kokoro then spoke up again, still unsure about what she's going to do with her father watching. I dunno if I can do it, Daddy. What if I get hurt? Or what if I hurt you? Koko said, still unsure. She's able to control her powers. Toshinori looks at his daughter with a sympathetic gaze, understanding why she's feeling like this. He sighs and says to her in the most understanding way possible. It's okay, honey, it's normal to be nervous for your first time. I mean, when I first tested out my quirk, I was nervous as heck. Toshinori was suddenly interrupted by his daughter. But what if I get hurt? I don't want to get hurt. I also don't want to hurt you. Coco said, truly not sure with herself at all. Honey, it's okay to get hurt when trying out new things, Toshinori said, trying to teach his a lesson before interrupted once more. But I don't want to get hurt, she said in a hushed tone, looking down scared. Honey, no one wants to get hurt when doing something new, but you know what matters? Toshinori asked his daughter. She said, genuinely curious. What matters is how you react to getting hurt. Yes, you'll cry and wince in pain. Yes, you'll fall to the ground and seethe. But what truly matters is how you deal with that pain. Do you roll on the ground and whine? Or do you slowly get up and pursue through it? Toshinori said, sharing some wisdom to his daughter. Coco took a while to understand what her father had just said to her. She was trying to comprehend her father's word that didn't make that much sense to a 5-year-old girl. As Izuku also absorbed the lesson his father had told to his sister. Toshinori indirectly teaching Izuku some wisdom he wasn't taught when he was younger. What does daddy mean? What matters is how you react to getting hurt. I don't get it that much, Coco said to herself, cutely staring off into space as her mind was still processing. Do I roll on the ground and whine? Or do I slowly get up and pursue it through? I don't know, I do either of those things. I really don't know, Izuku said to himself, questioning himself. Toshinori looked at his daughter's blank face with the same blank face. Realizing the mistake he had made while communicating his wisdom to his daughter. Oh yeah, right, I forgot that she's only 5 years old, she probably doesn't understand it yet, Toshinori said to himself, sighing at his own incompetence. Honey, are you okay? Toshinori said out loud, looking at his daughter who still was processing the information. Coco said, dragged out of her thoughts as her mind took a breather from processing too much. Maybe let's just continue on testing your quirk. Got it, honey? Toshinori said to his daughter, who looks mentally exhausted. Why yet? Kokoro said, her mind a bit heavy from the processing. Okay, now honey, I want you to try and activate your quirk. Toshinori said. 𝗬𝗲𝗄𝗏 try, daddy, Coco said as she gripped her tiny little fists and tried to activate her quirk. Toshinori saw his daughter struggling to activate her quirk. He then spoke up out of nowhere and said, just concentrate really hard, honey, daddy's here, you can do it, I believe in you. Toshinori said, encouraging his daughter the best way he can. I have to do this for daddy, Coco said as she concentrated even more as slowly but surely, spurts of yellow lightning surrounded her small body. As her eyes glowed yellow a bit as the spurts of yellow lighting started to duplicate. She then charged at her father, going extremely fast, almost like a slowed bullet in terms of speed. She crashes into her father, knocking him down, as he falls on his behind as he holds his daughter in his arms. As the flashes of bright yellow lightning slowly disappear as Kokoro went back to normal. Coco, honey, are you okay? Toshinori asked the tired Coco. Why, my legs hurt a bit, Coco said as she snuggled into her father's chest for comfort. I see, Toshinori said as he took note of his daughter's legs hurting. Hey honey, Toshinori said to Coco. Why yeah daddy, she said, removing her head from her father's chest. I'm really proud of you, Toshinori said, smiling sweetly at Coco. Who in return smiled back and hugged her father even more and said to him, love you daddy. Coco said to her father, hugging her with all her might. I love you too, honey. Toshinori said to his daughter, kissing her forehead and rubbing the back of her head. Izuku watched this sight unfold in front of him and couldn't help but feel jealous even more of his little sister. He never really felt the love of his father before or even after his diagnosis, as they never had that much interaction. He just looked on at the love he never received when he was younger. Now even more saddened at how he missed out on so much just because of his diagnosis. Izuku then chose to leave the room as he couldn't bear watching the two anymore. As his heart couldn't take it, so he moved his head backwards. As both his neck and head was no longer in the room. He walked a few steps back and clutched his chest area. He couldn't help but feel even more saddened now. As he ignored the feeling and buried it deep down in his heart. And tried to just keep moving forward, by walking down the hallway once more. He passed 2 more empty rooms before taking a sharp right, and seeing one staircase leading to the 2nd floor and another staircase leading to an underground floor. Izuku chose to go to the staircase upstairs as he was too uninterested to go to the underground floor. Izuku slowly walked up the stairs. He had no choice because of his injured leg and how it still stings a bit if you move it too much. He was halfway up the stairs by now as each step he took the stinging pain was still prevalent. As he couldn't help but think to himself about his stinging leg. How hard did I fall exactly? This pain in my leg shouldn't be present up to now. My tibia must be in really bad shape. I hate this stinging pain. I hope it goes away soon, he thought to himself, a bit agitated at his injured leg. He took one last step before placing both of his feet on the 2nd floor. He felt a bit exhausted after walking up a couple of stairs. He then proceeded to walk down another hallway, as he passed 6 rooms before suddenly stopping. He stopped in front of a regular brown mahogany door. This room was owned by him up until now as his door hasn't changed in the slightest. Izuku couldn't wonder why he was drawn onto his room. It could be to witness another memory. Or it could just be another door that leads him into another portal, who knows? As he was too tired to deal or think of other options. As he prepares to phase through the door once more, he stops as his chest fills with uncertainty. Nervous as to what awaits him behind this door. He takes a deep breath and slowly goes through the door. His eyes shut as he bites his lower lip to prepare if he screams or makes a loud noise. As he finally fully stepped through the door, he opens his eyes to see a dark room. The room was cold as it gave him a slight shiver. He noticed how the room was fairly clean, no mess or scattered toys. But he noticed one notable thing in the entire room. A small bump hiding under his blanket. He slowly approached his bed, wary of what was hiding in it. As he got closer to the bump, he noticed the bump in the blanket shifts a bit. He stopped and watched the bump's next movements. The bump in the blanket shifted and turned to its side, revealing something unexpected hiding inside the sheets. A young child no less than 5 years old, his face covered in tears as the child looked as if he were weeping for hours. He was clutching the sheets as another set of tears welled up in his eyes and continued to cry his heart out. The sight was disheartening as a child of his age shouldn't be weeping as hard as he was. Izuku froze in place as the child in front of him was himself when he was younger. He knew he was going to bear witness another memory, but he never expected to relive this memory. The worst part was that this memory takes place just a few hours after his diagnosis. He couldn't help but have even more self-pity for himself. It's not fair. Why do I have to be quirkless? It's not fair. Little Izuku said in anguish as his sight was blurry from the tears in his eyes. Izuku couldn't find the words to say or think as his mind went blank. What did I do? Am a good b-boy, alright? Did I do something wrong? 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗵𝗃. Little Izuku said as he tried to rub off the tears in his eyes. How come she gets a quirk? It's not fair at all. Little Izuku said as his attempt at rubbing off his tears had failed. Am I a bad b-boy? Do I not have a quirk because of something I did? I don't know anymore. Little Izuku said as he wrapped his blanket around him more as he started to cry quietly. Izuku still struggled to find the words or think of any. Little Izuku then said in a hushed voice under the blanket. He made a sound that most people wouldn't hear. Somehow Izuku could hear it. I want cuddles from mommy and daddy, Little Izuku said in a hushed voice as he continued to sob quietly. As this was going on, downstairs a celebration was going on as the 3 were having fun in the dining room. Both Little Izuku and Present Izuku heard this, and both had mixed reactions. Tears started streaming down Little Izuku's cheeks even more. As he softly sobbed into his blanket, wanting the comfort of his parents. Current Izuku, however, was indifferent, as he remembered the hearing them celebrate and how they rejoice only one of them while the other gets casted away like some sort of used toy. He tightened his fist in anger as veins popped out, his eyebrows furrowing. His mouth forming a snarl as his heart was slowly filled with bitterness against his family. He began thinking of violent thoughts, thoughts that he would never dare to think of or even do to people. His eyes slowly build up a fire of hatred in them, his emotions taking over him. He wanted to do something, he wanted to get back at them. He hated seeing himself sob quietly as he couldn't even help himself. It truly isn't fair, isn't fair at all. Izuku said out loud as he stomps his foot on the ground. He rushes to the door and was about to go through it and give his parents a piece of his mind. He was about to rush downstairs before he stopped. Placing his hand on the doorknob, he gripped it as he tried and buried his emotions once more. His breath became hitched as he struggled to bury them. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 shouldn't be so stirred up about this. I don't have the right to be angry, it isn't right, Izuku said to himself, trying to calm himself. All of a sudden Izuku's grip around the doorknob increases as the knob looks as if it was being slowly crushed, inhuman strength suddenly appearing out of nowhere. His anger slowly rising up once more as he didn't want to bury these feelings anymore. He didn't notice that he was crushing the doorknob as his anger made him ignorant of his surroundings. Beautits not fairy have the right to be, and I have treated me worse than common trash. I'm tired of burying these else, must I suffer even more? Izuku said out loud, still tightening his grip around the knob. His eyes suddenly started flashing a bright golden-like hue. His soft emerald eyes morphing into bright hypnotizing golden ones. The glow was bright and dangerous as it reflected his pent-up anger. After a few more seconds a snap could be heard. Izuku's gaze shifted towards his hand, seeing that he had snapped the door knob off the door. He then looks at his hands and then to the broken door knob with horror in his eyes. As they slowly morph back to its original green color. He loosens his grip as the door knob falls to the ground, as it slowly rolled under his bed. He takes a few steps back as his breath became hitched and his eyes shake in horror. As he muttered this phrase in a hushed voice, too afraid to raise his voice. What have I done? Izuku said repeatedly as he tried to process what he had just done a few minutes ago. Was it because he was angry that he broke the doorknob? No, it couldn't quite possibly be that he doesn't have the sheer strength to do it. Maybe the doorknob was extremely brittle. No, it doesn't explain it at all. If it were brittle then it would have shattered into hundreds of pieces. Maybe the doorknob was already broken before he had arrived. Then how come it didn't pop off immediately? Maybe, just maybe, the doorknob was made with really cheap material. No, that doesn't help either, as if it were then he would have broken it a long time ago. These were the thoughts that had plagued his stressed mind, as he wanted to find an answer as to where the sudden strength had come from. He was struggling to find a valid theory as all the answers he had come up with contradicted itself. As now his mind was filled with questions of how and why. And why? And why? How and why? How did I do that? And why did I do that? His mind boggled at how he did that and why he had done that. He then thought of placing both his hands on his head and massage it, but stopped midway through. And slowly placing it back in front of him as he realized that he could have hurt himself if he had gripped his head. As his hands shook as it reflected his shaky stare at it, fear encapsulating him. These hands, Izuku said to himself as he tried to distance himself from his own hands. But before he could react any further, his gaze towards his hands had shifted as he realized something. That he was able to interact with objects in this old memory. He then remembered that he had no recollection when he was younger seeing his doorknob gone. He then snapped his head to the direction of where the doorknob could have fell. He tried finding it in desperation. But before he could have done anything else further, a bright light had appeared behind him. He turned around suddenly to see another door. This time it was a mahogany-type door. He knew why the door had appeared and he knew that he had to go through it once more. But he wanted to continue on with finding the doorknob and fixing it the best he can. A couple of minutes go by and it seems that Izuku couldn't find the doorknob as he had lost hope in finding the doorknob. He sighed disappointingly as he slowly walked to the bright mahogany door. Grabbing its doorknob with hesitation, fear of breaking this doorknob as well. As he gently grips the doorknob and twists it, opening the door slowly, revealing another portal. He was going to fall into the portal before suddenly stopping. He had this feeling that he wanted to stay a bit longer in this memory. As he still heard his younger version's cries, it broke his heart to hear them. He wanted to comfort him, but he couldn't understand why he couldn't do that. He wanted to give himself the only comfort he ever wanted. But he knew deep down that it was worthless. as he knew that it didn't even mean anything and that it had no impact on changing the outcome, even just a tiny bit. As he sighs once more, an emotionless expression on his face as he fall through the portal. But as he fell, he muttered a phrase in a quiet tone. Sometimes even the smallest of actions take the strongest of wills, and I don't have that wilt, he said as he slowly fell to the pits of despair, knowing his actions don't matter. As he finally fell through the portal, the door shutting itself with a bang. As the door slowly disappeared from existence, only leaving the original door without the knob and the younger Izuku crying while still being comfortless. But as all seemed quiet, something was happening. As the memory and the world surrounding it started to glitch around itself, slowly becoming unnoticeable to becoming violent. After a few seconds, the glitch had suddenly disappeared, leaving the world the same as little Izuku continued to cry and the 3 family members still celebrated. But something was off in the room, as when you take another look at the door. A certain doorknob that was previously crushed had reappeared in perfect condition and was attached to the door. Transition brought to you by Izuku eating cutely. No one's POV. A portal once more opened up out of nowhere in an empty hallway. The hallway looked very simple, as if it were a simple default hallway. It was a Japanese school standard hallway, although it was very vacant with no one or thing roaming the vast hallway. It was a bright and sunny day, as the floor tiles shined in the light, showing how spotless and clean it was. The janitors sure did a great job for keeping it clean. As the portal continued to swirl more and more, the hypnotizing mix of blue and purple colors swirling endlessly. A figure seemed to be coming out of the portal like a small dot, until the dots slowly get bigger and bigger, revealing an unconscious Izuku, his body floating down the spiral portal in fast speeds. As he got closer to the portal, his speed drastically slowed down. As his unconscious self was spat out from the portal once more, face first landing on the clean floor tiles. He started to regain consciousness as he groaned in pain from feeling the pain of landing face first once more. He then murmured in pain as it was sort of muffled because of how he hadn't lifted his head up yet. He places both of his hands onto the ground and get into a semi-push-up position. As he slowly tries to lift himself up, as he struggles with the lack of muscles in his arms. He knew that his efforts of getting up by semi-push-up was worthless, as he knew he doesn't have the arm strength to do it. As he plops back down to the ground face first once more. He then chooses to just lift his head up, revealing his bruised face as his cheeks and nose were a bit red from the fall. He then turned his head side to side and examined his surroundings, as he was a bit confused as to where he was. It took him quite a while to slowly recognize where he was. As he then spoke out loud in a bit of an exhausted tone. What memory is it this time? It's obvious that I'm going to relive another school memory. Their way, it will still have the intended effect, Izuku said in an unimpressed tone. He sighs as he slowly sits up, still wincing in pain from his injured tibia. It was honestly just getting annoying this point for Izuku. As he positions himself, his back faced against the wall. As he slowly leans back and feels the cold hard wall making contact with his back. He lays his head on the wall as his face only made one notable expression. He looked emotionless as. His expression was the void of any human emotion. His eyes were dead as the light he once had in them slowly withered away moment by moment until nothing was left. His body's expression reflected his eyes. It was still and motionless, as he wasn't concerned at all about them. He was tired of everything. He places both of his hands on his face, covering it whole as he took a sharp breath inwards. He then placed them over his mouth as they made a triangle-like shape. He then breathes out as he looked at the ground, staring at the tiles, seeing his reflection. He chuckles a bit at the sight of himself. Before commenting on himself while chuckling. Look at yourself, look at what you've became, Izuku. So ragged and face full of smudges, I mean just look at your uniform, it's a mess. Izuku said as he commented on himself in a mocking tone. I mean the clothing reflects the wear, I'm such a mess, just look at how you're just sitting there all alone and so tired, no fire in your eyes, no passionate as if it were out of you in a single moment, he said as his tone became more depressing. He then chuckles even more as tears swell up in his eyes, his hands now gripping the sides of his head. As his laughter sounds more and more forced as tears one by one fall from his eyes. His laughs then slowly dies down as his tears only remain. Is this my life now? Just suffering and pain made to watch memories filled with heartbreak and misery. And for what? So that I can watch even more, he says as his eyes stare off into the empty space. Tears still falling from his eyes one by one as he still continues to chuckle. What word could I describe this situation? What's the word exactly? Yes, cruel, that's it. That's the best word to describe this situation. Oh. It's the best word to describe my life, just so much pain, he said as he tried to make comedy of his entire situation. He then laughs even more as it continues to sound even more forced. As his mind is seemingly breaking at the seams, the influx of painful memories resurfacing and reliving them. The thought of thinking he has to watch and relive even more was enough to break him. He then places his hands on the sides of his face, surprised to feel them wet. He retracts his hands back from his cheeks and look at them, seemingly shocked at the sudden realization that he was crying. He then tried to be sure even more as he touched his cheeks to feel even more dry tears and new ones. As he stops laughing in shock, he then looks at another shiny floor tile, seeing his reflection once more. Seeing his broken state, seeing the tears flow from his eyes. Seeing the forced smile he put on, seeing how dirty and ragged his clothes had gotten. But the thing he haunted him the most was realizing the state of mind he's in. How he can't even think straight anymore, how his mind was being pushed to its limits. All he knew was that he wasn't himself at all anymore. Is this what I've become? I've become so broken, my thoughts empty as I can't even think straight anymore. Just witnessing T2 memories broke me, Izuku said as his traced a tear on his left cheek. He tucked his legs as he cries into them. The sight of his broken state made him sob at what he has become to. His sobs could be heard down the empty hallway by how loud and powerful they were. He was crying his heart out as the grief, pain, and sadness he had buried deep down had resurfaced and were let out. His right arm stopped hugging his legs as he gripped his hand into a fist, as he had also grew angry. He was angry that he had to relive these memories once again. He was angry that he knew he would witness even more. And he was furious at who was the cause for all his pain and suffering. The 𝗵𝗃 thing he only just met today had put him through this painful suffering. He wanted to get him back. He wanted to show him what it's like to relive painful memories. He wanted vengeance. But he knew deep down that the vengeance he wanted was unobtainable to reach. This angered him as he started slamming his fist onto the ground. He wanted to show him what it felt like to receive the other end of the stick, but knew it would never ever happen. As he continuously slammed his fist into the ground with so much force, the anger numbing the pain he should have felt from hitting the floor endlessly. But as he hit the floor in anger more and more, something began to happen. As the world seemed to glitch once again without him realizing it. As he continued to slam his fist into the ground, the world began to glitch more and more to the point it became highly unstable. As the glitching in the world became even more violent, Izuku didn't seem to notice it as he was too busy angrily slamming his fist onto the ground. Until the intense glitching seemed to stop as the world seemed to go back to normal once more. Izuku was perfectly fine if you don't count his outfit and appearance. But his surroundings were off and strange as it seemed that he wasn't in the same place anymore. As he was now seen in an empty and mostly dark and fully white hallway. It was ominous as a dark door was centered at the end of the hallway, with seemingly no light whatsoever illuminating the door. The hallway looked long and endless as it had several white doors on its sides with no plates or any signs telling what the room is for and what's its use. Izuku then lifts his head up to reveal a still crying face with a mix of dry and wet tears on his cheeks. His eyes widen in horror as he realizes that he had been taken to another hallway. As he turns his head in fear, checking if the other hallway was on the opposite side. What shocked him the most was that the other side was the same with the first side. With the same endless hallway with hundreds of doors to the side and one ominous dark door at the end. He turned his head once more and face front, hoping to see just a wall. But instead it was the same with the other turns, as the same long white hallway was there again. It freaked Izuku out as he suddenly got up and gripped the wall supporting him. He started hyperventilating as he couldn't understand his situation at all once again. His breath became quick as he kept on taking sharp breaths inwards and outwards. as his legs felt weak and his stomach churned from anxiety. He tried to find solace with his back firmly flat on the wall behind him, afraid to turn around and lose said wall, as all he could say at the time was, "What's going on?" He said. Panic filled his voice, as his scream was heard everywhere down the hallway, as it also echoed down it, making loud repeats of what Izuku had said each time it went deeper down the hallway. He couldn't understand why it echoed, possibly from how the sound is bouncing off the walls. But his thoughts were interrupted by the sheer anxiety he had, as he still couldn't make sense of anything that was going on. But all he felt was a simple feeling of being drawn down the hallway and to open the door.